Chapter 51. The Neo-Marines. The hot spring house, surrounded by a touch of white mist, obscured the moving figures. The guards were lying on the edge of the hot spring. At that time, even the hot water couldn't lift their spirit. It is indeed very pleasant, and very comfortable to soak your body in the hot spring, but 3 months is really too long. Ah, when will this day be over? I think it's pretty good. You don't have to think too much, just take it easy and you're done. No way. When is Jun-sama going to finish training that little handsome guy? Speaking of this, it seems that Eleanor Dano is going to compete with the handsome guy today. I don't know what the result will be. As soon as the words fell, they saw Eleanor walking in with a blank face. She walked fast, but also heavy, and she seemed to be sulking. The guards are all human beings, and naturally, they are keenly aware that something was wrong, so they started whispering. Something went wrong. Could it be that she got defeated? Tisk tisk, isn't handsome Road weak? Even though the guards kept their voices down, Eleanor still heard them. Her already sulky face became even sulkier. However, Eleanor had an emergency to report, so she just gave these guards a stern look and then quickened her pace. She then walked to the deepest part of the hot spring house, and said to Jun, who was in the hot spring. Jun-sama, there is a situation. Jun opened her eyes lazily, glanced at some of the torn clothes on her body, felt stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. Are you here to tell me that you got bullied by Rhodes? A few black lines appeared on Eleanor's forehead, ignored this unscrupulous officer, then she just said expressionlessly. The Neo-Marines, Captain, Black Arm Zephyr is going to attack a group of pirates in the waters near us, and he has sent a message asking us to cooperate in the battle. Zephyr-sensei. Jun was stunned for a moment, and her expression became serious. Zephyr is a former admiral of the Marines, and he has also served as the chief instructor of the Marines for many years. Most of the current admirals in the Marines are his students, and Jun is no exception. That's right. Eleanor said. What we have to deal with is the great pirate Spark. Although Black Arm Zephyr is sure to defeat Spark, he cannot guarantee that there won't be casualties among his subordinates, so he asked us to cooperate in the battle. We have no orders. Whether or not to participate depends on your choice. After she finished speaking, she stood quietly on the spot, waiting for Jun's order. At work, Eleanor is still very responsible. Jun squinted slightly. She understands that Zephyr's personality changed, and she knows what has been done recently, but there are too many things involved. Jun can't do anything, so she can only let it go. Of course, we're going to help. After thinking for a moment, Jun said. Anyway, Spark Pirates group doesn't belong to any of the 4 Yonko, so if he wants to kill him, let him kill him. Eleanor was not surprised, she nodded and planned to go out to issue an order. Ordinary Marines, and other vice admirals, might have to be careful when facing big pirates like Spark, but Jun didn't think much about it, it was nothing more than waving her sword a few times. Wait, change your clothes first, Jun said, then burst out laughing. Jun's voice came from behind, mercilessly opening Eleanor's scar again. Unable to bear it any longer, Eleanor jumped on Jun. A strange atmosphere suddenly took place inside the hot springs. On the warship. Looking at the island that disappeared under the sea horizon in the distance, Rhodes let out a light breath, showing a little emotion. Now that he thinks about it, he came to Pirate World less than a year ago. Excluding the first 3 months, the time he spent out, and the special training time, it's more than 6 months. For 3.5 months at the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army, he practiced Soru and Jeppo, and the Busashoku Haki. The other 3 months were spent practicing swordsmanship with Jun. The 3 months on the Fire Island did not seem to be long, but in fact, it took up almost half of Rhodes' training time. For such a long time, his progress was of course very impressive. The core improvement is of course in swordsmanship, and it was even enough to make him on an equal foot with Eleanor, who is a senior swordsman. It can be said that after 3 months of special training, Rhodes' swordsmanship has completely stepped up, even Jun cannot pick out too many flaws in it anymore. Now he has the right foundation to set foot in the realm of great swordsmen. At this stage, it is also difficult for Jun to give Rhodes any further guidance. He needs to walk on his own now, create his own style, and understand the profound meaning of sword. This is the only way to become a great swordsman. In addition, Rhodes never stopped training his haki. Knowing that he made little success in the Busashoku Haki before, he focused more on it. However, the improvement of the Busashoku Haki is always limited to the current physical state. My physical strength at this time should not be weaker than that of commodores of the Marines. The speed and flexibility are even faster due to the mode of thunder. Rhodes handled the rail and easily kneaded it into a twist. Rhodes smiled upon seeing that and opened the attribute column. Tier 2, Book of Knowledge. Attributes, Intelligence +2, Wisdom +1. Talent. Swordsmanship Specialist, Human and Sword. The understanding of swordsmanship will be greatly improved. Thunder Control, the God of Thunder was reborn. You can freely control the power of lightning. Energy, 717/1000. The power of lightning at 717. Rhodes smiled, and blue light flashed in his eyes. With this level of lightning power, the destructive power is definitely enough to threaten the existence of the Vice Admiral level. It may be a little off to deal with an Admiral, but the likes of the Reed Admirals will definitely not be able to bear this damage. If it is matched with a higher level of swordsmanship, I don't know how far it will reach. Even a Vice Captain wouldn't be my opponent. Rhodes showed a hint of satisfaction. In this sea, it is very difficult for a Rear Admiral level powerhouse to roam alone. It is easy to encounter fatal crises, such as large sea kings, big storms, etc. But someone at the Vice Admiral level can take off on their own. Even in the new world where the strong are like clouds, a little bit of care would be enough to sail. Among the strong people in the entire pirate world, the Rear Admiral level is enough to rank you at the top. This is a goal that most normal people can't achieve in their entire lives. Rhodes is now in this echelon. Further up, there are existences that are only one step away from the peak, such as Marco the Phoenix, 3 Disasters, and Doflamingo family members. In the end, of course, the peak powerhouse standing on the cloud and overlooking the sea, the 4 emperors, the Admiral of the Navy, the great swordsman. The hardest the road, the more exciting. Rhodes sighed with emotion, but he didn't seem too proud. According to Jun, Rhodes is still at the beginning. There are many people who are where Rhodes is now, but there are very few who went further. Chapter 52. N. In a calm sea, a giant Marines warship was slowly sailing. On the deck of the warship, there was the Neo Marines group. The average strength of this group of people is much higher than that of Jun's subordinates. This is the Neo Marines pirates led by the former Admiral of the Marines, Black Arm Zephyr, who specializes in hunting pirates. On the upper deck, a tall and burly man who had a robotic arm was standing upright, looking at the sea in the distance, with coldness. It was Black Arm, Zephyr. Zephyr initially joined the Navy in order to become a hero. At the age of 42, his family was killed by the pirates and everything since then changed. He wanted to resign, but he was persuaded to become an instructor of the Marines, and later he was responsible for training Marine recruits. The current 3 admirals and most of the Marines commanders were all trained under him, and his teaching ability can be said to be top-notch. It was only later that he was attacked by Whitebeard. He lost his arm during that battle and all the students on his ship except Anne and Binz. Since then, he changed greatly. And last year, he formed the Neo Marines to kill pirates everywhere. Behind him stood a woman with long pretty blue hair. She had very long legs, delicate facial features, and big, bright eyes. She was the one with the return ability, Anne. Teacher, I heard that Vice Captain Jun is a great swordsman. Zephyr nodded slightly, showing a slight smile. When she comes, you can ask her for advice. That's great. Anne looked happy. As a swordsman, being able to get the guidance of a great swordsman is really a dream. Oh, by the way, Jun has an apprentice. I heard that he is only 17 years old. He will also be there. I accept you will take part too. Zephyr said. Yes. Anne nodded and said a little curiously, the students of Vice Captain Jun should be very talented swordsmen. If there is a chance, I would love it if we have a spare. It's fine to learn from each other, but he's only 17 years old. No matter how talented he is in swordsmanship, his strength will not be too strong. Be careful, don't hurt her student. Zephyr said, Jun's temper is not very good. Well, I'll pay attention. Anne nodded quickly. Time gradually passed. Soon, Jun's warship appeared in their field of vision, and the 2 warships quickly rendezvoused and sailed side by side. In terms of position, Jun is higher than Zephyr, but as her junior, Jun still brought Rhodes and others to the Zephyr warship to greet him. After getting on the ship, Jun wanted to catch up with Zephyr and discuss a specific battle plan, so Rhodes was left on the deck. Tisk, there are more familiar faces all of a sudden. Rhodes glanced around. The beautiful swordsman Anne, the martial artist Master Shuzo, and the Grow devil fruit user, Bins. These three are extremely strong, at least comparable to that of a vice admiral in the headquarters of the Marine. Especially Anne's ability, the return fruit, is extremely strange. Once she uses it on anything, its age will be reduced by 12 years. If it's used multiple times, it will even be wiped out. The Busashoku Haki should have the effect of blocking it, otherwise this ability will be a cheat. As Rhodes was thinking, the N and the other two walked towards him, introducing themselves, while looking at him curiously. Looks a little thin, not strong at all. The tough guy Shuzo thought so, and then stepped forward proudly, patted Rhodes on the shoulder, and said, "Young man, keep close to me on the island so I can ensure your safety." Rhodes was speechless. Is he comparing sizes? What a pain in the neck. Anne looked at the handsome young man in front of her curiously. He seemed to have left a touch of goodwill in her heart. Compared with Bins, who looked similar to a middle-aged man, Rhodes' image was obviously more pleasing to the eye. She looked at Rhodes' sword with big, bright eyes, hesitated for a moment, but couldn't help but say, "Do you want to have a spare?" The apprentice of a great swordsman should have many merits. She thought so. Rhodes was stunned for a moment, then hesitated for a while, but decided to tell the truth, "You are not my opponent." If Anne could have fought Rhodes 3 months ago, he might have lost. But now? He wasn't bragging, he didn't think that any of these three can defeat him. Anne's expression froze when she heard these words, she never expected to get this answer. This is too crazy. Shuzo was stunned. The three of them were all former Marine soldiers, and their strength is at its peak. They are proficient in Haki, the Rokushoki. And they can be regarded as the core of the Neo-Marines group. Anne was obviously not convinced. She narrowed her eyes, took out 2 short swords that were not much longer than a dagger, and said a little angrily, "Then please give me some pointers." A 17-year-old brat dares to speak out. Anne felt that Rhodes should be taught a lesson and let him know what it means to be humble. This kind of arrogance may be fine sometimes, but against the cruel pirates, it can lead to death. Silence controlled the scene for a while. Bins wanted to dance to cheer up the atmosphere, but seeing Anne's icy pretty face, he couldn't help but shrink back. In the Neo-Pirates, Zephyr is the core, followed by Anne. Whether it's strength or ability, Anne is outstanding. Why do none of them accept the truth? Rhodes sighed in his heart, so he could only wave at Anne, signaling her to attack. With his current skills in swordsmanship, sparring with Anne is just bullying her. This guy, do you really think that Anne wants his advice? Shuzo was speechless. This spare attracted the attention of many people. The members of the Neo-Marines and Jun's guards were watching curiously not far away. The guards were curious about Rhodes' ability that helped him defeat Eleanor, while most of the members of the Neo-Marines members were a bit excited. They thought it would be a battle between dragons and tigers, they didn't expect that it would end very quickly. It was only 2 moves. Rhodes brutally swung away Anne's double daggers, dashed in, and held Anne's delicate neck with his empty left hand. At that moment, if he exerted a little force, this beautiful swordsman would have perished. The silence controlled the place. Everyone stared at this scene in astonishment. Feeling the heat coming from her neck, Anne's somewhat annoying mood instantly turned into disbelief. How can, the gap is so big? She couldn't even react to Rhodes' attack. Accurate swordsmanship, terrifying speed. I said, you are not my opponent. Rhodes shook his head, let go of his hand, took a step back, and sheathed his sword. Anne squatted on the ground, gasping for breath. Her face flushed, looking at Rhodes inexplicably. Anne's overall strength is very good, and her ability is terrifying, but when it comes to swordsmanship, it's a bit lacking. In front of Rhodes, she couldn't even make a move. If Shuzo, who specializes in body-changing techniques, was the opponent, he might have been able to do a few more tricks. Chapter 53. Attack. The sea breeze blew gently, and the deck was silent. What just happened? Anne was instantly defeated. Everyone, especially the members of the Neo-Marines, couldn't help but rub their eyes as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Anne was the pillar of the Neo-Marines by being one of the strongest, and the only people who can be compared with her are Shuzo and Binz. Coupled with her delicate face and beautiful body, she is extremely famous in the Marines' headquarters, and her popularity is high, even Jun's personal guards have heard of her. Brother Rhodes is very strong, no wonder Eleanor was shriveled. I thought he only had that handsome face, but I didn't expect him to be so strong. I'm so moved. Back off, Rhodes is mine. The guards were whispering, laughing, and talking nonsense. How did Anne lose? Did she underestimate him? Binz was a little bewildered. He ate the grow devil fruit. So he can spawn plants and control them to fight. His ability is similar to the wood release in Naruto world, but his strength is not known by many people. He is often educated by Anne. No, this young man is too strong. Shuzo looked a little dignified. He was a master of martial arts, he could see more things than Binz. Anne couldn't keep up with Rhodes' rhythm. She was defeated and restrained in an instant. Although she fought with some carelessness, a real fight probably wouldn't last for a few more rounds. On the upper deck, no one knew when Zephyr and Jun appeared here, but they have watched the entire battle. Looks like you have a good apprentice. The look in Zephyr's eyes was a little deep as if he had remembered something. A smile flashed in Jun's eyes, but she said indifferently, it's still a long way off. He's very good, even the three of them were at this level at the beginning, or maybe even a little weaker. However, those three had very powerful Logia-type devil fruits. Zephyr shook his head slightly. He is said to be the best at training and excavating newcomers in the pirate world, and he can easily tell a person's potential and future from some details. If I haven't taken that crucial step, no matter how strong my potential was at the time, I wouldn't have become a great swordsman. Jun saw it clearly. In the era of the great pirates, every year, there are supernovas with extraordinary talents or others with powerful devil fruit abilities. There are also those who are proficient in haki and some top swordsmen. However, those who really meet their potential, let alone reach the pinnacle, are very few compared to lower-level existences such as Doflamingo. Zephyr didn't speak any more. Because what Jun said was quite right, only a few can be remembered as legends on this sea. The two giant warships sailed. As long as they don't break into the territory of the Yonko, they should be safe. With full speed, they soon came near to their target. The pirate group that Rhodes and others had to deal with this time was once called the Devil Pirates. Captain Spark was a supernova 10 years ago. After breaking into the New World, he did a series of great achievements, and stirred up the situation, thus, his bounty was 340 million. Later, no one knows what happened, he just stopped sailing, and took an island of himself, engaging in criminal transactions such as drugs, slaves, arms, and weapons. Through various clues, Zephyr found the old nest of the Spark forces and decided to attack and destroy them. However, because he was worried about casualties, he called Jun for help. At this moment, on the warship, Rhodes and others looked forward and could already see the outline of an island in the distance. As soon as we get close, Anne, Rhodes, and others will quickly break into the island and kill the enemy cotters. The rest of the under the leadership of Adjutant Eleanor will make steady progress to eliminate the fishes that will slip through the net. Jun will go ahead and take care of Spark. Harmon should be there too, he's the top cotter of the Devil Pirates. The other members of the crew should all be strong too. They are all pirates with a bounty of over 100 million, or even more than 200 million. It has been many years now, and they should be stronger. Zephyr issued a battle plan with a solemn face and arranged everyone's tasks. Do you understand? Yes. Anne and the others roared imposingly. On the side, Jun had an indifferent look on her face, this lazy woman is only responsible for cutting people. If it wasn't for Zephyr who was in charge this time, she would have definitely gone to the island alone, then she would call for her guards to clean up the mess after the fight. Be careful. Before leaving, Jun said to Rhodes. After all, actual combat is different, and any accident may happen. She finally found a precious apprentice, and she doesn't want to lose him here. Rhodes smiled and said, don't worry, only a few people on this island can be a threat to me. Jun nodded lightly, then followed Zephyr using Jeppo to attack Spark. At the same time, the warship was heading towards the island at full speed. There were watchtowers on the island when they saw two giant warships approaching, their faces lost colors. A Marine's warship is approaching. The sentinels looked nervous and hurriedly reported the news. On the island, a clubhouse. This clubhouse was splendid and luxurious on the outside, but there were a lot of prisons underground, imprisoning a large number of slaves, fishmen, mermaids, little people, long-handed people, and so on. Most of these slaves were shivering, but no one even dares to resist or cry, because if they dare to do so, they will be beaten to death, and life is better than death. At this time, on the top floor of the building, in a room on the bright side of the island, Harmon, the top cotter, was sitting face to face with a bald old man. Boss Spark was very satisfied with this transaction, and he's sending his gratitude to your captain. Well, I'll tell him. The bald-headed old man's expression was light, with a hint of arrogance that was difficult not to detect. Harmon didn't take it seriously. Although their devil pirates have been operating very well in the past 10 years, they cannot be compared to these guys. The Doflamingo family is dominating the underground world, and the man himself is one of the Shishibukai. Even one of his Diamante army officers, Lao Ji, is strong enough to be comparable to him. Prep. Suddenly, Harmon frowned slightly and took a den mushi out of his pocket. What's wrong? Boss Harmon, there is a Marines invasion. Harmon narrowed his eyes slightly, although he was not confused. The moment he was about to ask for more information, he heard a continuous roar from a distance as if it were hundreds of cannons firing at the same time. This firepower! Lao Ji's expression suddenly changed. Chapter 54. Landing on the island. The island was built as a commercial market, and there were not too many defending fortresses deployed. The warship decked smoothly after using a few cannons to destroy any obstacles. Judging by the collective work of the people on the warship, everyone could tell that these guys aren't here for a picnic. Hurry up and contact Spark, I'm afraid these guys will not be easy to deal with. Lao Ji walked to the window, squinted in the distance, and said in a low voice. Harmon's expression changed slightly, but he immediately contacted Spark. Normally, Spark would be available no matter what is happening. However, no matter how many times he tried, he couldn't contact Spark at all. At this time, Spark was busy ordering his subordinates to defend the shores of the island. Suddenly, two figures appeared on the opposite side, and he couldn't help but say, Vice Captain Jun, and Black Arm, Zephyr. The Marines really like me. If it were only one of these two, there may be a chance to escape, but if the two join forces, he will only be able to drag the fight for a while. Spark, you committed countless crimes during the past 10 years, you're strongly connected to every criminal transaction on this island. Today, you will not escape death. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. Zephyr said with a cold expression, while murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Hi, justice! Spark sneered. At his level, he has already seen through the nature of the world, and he is too lazy to discuss the so-called justice with Zephyr. Hearing this, Zephyr narrowed his eyes slightly and did not continue to speak, because he didn't want to talk to a pirate, and partly because he was also a little confused about it. The many contradictions within the Marines and the decisions of the world government made him doubt justice. He is not as casual and rambunctious as Garb, nor as scheming as Sengoku. In the end, he could only leave and establish the Neo-Marines, so he can implement justice in his own way. At this moment, the ground suddenly shook, as if endless artillery fire was pouring on the ground. Simultaneously, a piercing alarm sounded over the island. This was obviously the Marines attacking the islands. We need to solve it quickly. I don't want my dear subordinates to be injured. Jun slowly pulled out the Mito sword Kanpura hanging from her waist and walked toward Spark with an indifferent expression. Zephyr followed her. The battle broke out instantly. The astonishing movement overwhelmed the sound of alarms echoing in the sky and overwhelmed the roar of artillery fire in the distance. Zephyr was a former admiral of the Marines and a pure fighter expert, but because of his lost arm, old age, and frailty, his strength is not as good as it was in the past. His conventional strength should be in the ranks of quasi-vice admiral. As for Jun, the great swordsman who was at her peak may not be as good as the three admirals in overall comparison, but when it comes to the sharpness of her attack power, she was even better. The combined force of the two was enough to suppress the existence of the likes of Doflamingo, so Spark was naturally in a pinch. As a big pirate whose reward is 340 million 10 years ago, Spark is really strong. He even has an ancient animal type ability Devil Fruit, coupled with an extraordinary Busashoku Haki, he managed to keep his foothold for a while. After all, the powerhouses in the pirate world are known for their vitality, and those with animal abilities are considered monsters among monsters. If Zephyr was here alone, the two may even have to fight for a day and a night before one of them falls. The three tacitly moved the battlefield away from the frontal side. Zephyr and Jun were worried about accidentally hurting their subordinates. They also feared that Spark might jump off the wall, rush into Marine's camp, and use people as barging to escape. On the other hand, Spark still held on to a glimmer of hope, feeling that the manpower on the island was enough to defeat the Marines' invasion. Once they defeat them, they will come to support him. Of course, he would not have this confidence in normal circumstances. After all, Zephyr's crew was strong enough to defeat his subordinates, but there were people from the Doflamingo family on the island, so there might be a chance. Spark is no longer the big pirate who wouldn't fear battle. After 10 years of complete silence, he surely become more powerful, but it also made him cherish life. As long as there is a chance, he will not give up. The prosperity was gone, and the smoke of gunpowder filled the sky. Since this was Spark's base camp, an island of pirates, there were no ordinary people in here, all of them were killers and the like. As soon as the Marines gained a firm foothold on the island, they encountered tenacious sniping attacks from the other side of the island, but under the leadership and command of Eleanor, the Marines fought steadily and pushed forward. The Neo-Marines members such as Anne, Shuzo, Binz, and the others, entered the island first, intercepted the enemy cotters, and disrupted the order in the rear. On the street, Rhodes walked casually, and leisurely as if he was still in the hot springs. He was very calm, and his confidence came from his strength. At this moment, Rhodes may not be as good as Mihawk who travels the world with one sword, but he also has enough self-protection power to deal with most situations. On this island, only the great pirate Spark can threaten his life, and the rest, including the top cotters such as Harmon, he has to fight to know. At this moment, he suddenly felt something and looked in its direction. Under the telephone pole, a tall and burly man was looking at him with murderous intent. It seems to be a cotter under Spark's command, but what is he called again? How much is his reward? Rhodes shook his head, he was too lazy to think about it. Whoosh! As soon as Rhodes stepped toward him, the street shook violently, the ground cracked open like a spider web, and a circle of invisible airwaves oscillated out. At the same time, his body rushed forward like lightning. The murderous intent in the eyes of the pirate cotter instantly faded, and a look of horror appeared on his face. He regained his senses and immediately turned around to run. However, he only managed to take a few steps forward. Suddenly, he heard a shrill whistling sound from behind. He turned around and saw Rhodes approaching at top speed. Up until that moment he had never seen this kind of terrifying speed. The only man close to it was the top cotter, Harmon. I won't make it. Feeling the cold wind coming from behind, he gritted his teeth and let out a loud roar. Busashoku haki! At the same time, he used hardening to strengthen his body's defense, and his skin instantly turned blue and black, like steel, with an indestructible texture. Go to hell! He was ready to fight to the death. However, just as he turned around, a figure quickly staggered past him, making his face trembled. He froze in place, and the look in his eyes quickly dimmed. Then a trace of blood ran diagonally along his left shoulder and neck and quickly spread to the lower abdomen. With a slight sway, half of his body began to slowly slide down the bloodline. Rhodes calmly shook his sword twice, put the blade into the sheath, and then continued to walk forward slowly. Chapter 55. True Strength. When facing an opponent on the same level as him, the sharpness and swiftness attached to the lightning mode may only give Rhodes an advantage to suppress him, but when facing an enemy weaker than him, this advantage will instantly expand and become extremely deadly. Just like this cotter, if he were fighting against Eleanor, he would have been able to keep his foothold for a while. In other words, it is a powerful pirate with a reward of over 150 million, and his power is enough to make him a captain of a pirate group. But facing Rhodes, he was instantly killed by his sword. It's still a long way off. Compared to a great swordsman who slashes icebergs and islands with a single slash. To them, this level is no different from a child playing. Rhodes' expression was light, and he continued to walk toward the center of the island. Along the way, the streets were full of blood and corpses. Under his extreme speed, these ordinary pirates often couldn't even react and died, which is a bit unfortunate for them. The battle was its climax. Rhodes swept and crushed, and the frontal battlefield was also steadily advancing under the command of Eleanor. However, Anne was in a pinch. During the collision, although she forcibly killed a cotter through her special devil fruit ability, she was also entangled by a swordsman who targeted her and she got caught up in a hard battle. Because he had seen Anne's special abilities, this swordsman did not give Anne the opportunity to use her abilities at all. With his superior swordsmanship and haki, he suppressed Anne. Boom! The moment they were separated by an explosion of cannon, Anne's heart sank, and she stepped back without hesitation. She was very calm, she could clearly distinguish the strength of the enemy, and after analyzing the odds of winning, she found that she was likely to be killed if she carried on. So she decided to withdraw to the frontal battlefield. Regardless of everything, she successfully killed one of the pirate cotters, which can be regarded as a good performance. It's just that in one day, she lost to 2 swordsmen one after another, which made her feel a little uncomfortable. Clang Kang! Anne fought back while retreating. Facing this skilled 6-style swordsmanship, even though this swordsman was stronger, it was difficult to hold her. Are you just running? Marine girl! The swordsman was furious. The pirate Anne killed was a good friend of him. If was just killed he wouldn't have been this bothered, since they were pirates and they were prepared for such a day. But this also depends on the method of death. But the guy's age was reduced until he was turned into a baby, then vanished, the poor bastard died miserably. The guy couldn't bear the tragic death of his companion. Hearing his shouts, Anne's expression was extremely calm. Obviously, it was not the first time that she had encountered such a situation. If I can just find one of my companions, we can work together to kill him. As long as a teammate with similar strength to her stepped forward to hold him back, she will eventually find an opportunity to use her retreat ability to finish him off. And almost at the same time, she thought so, at the end of the street ahead, a sword-wielding figure that made her a little tangled, walked slowly over. Not this guy. She was defeated by him not long ago, and now that he's seeing such an embarrassed side of her, Anne subconsciously felt a little unhappy and embarrassed. His swordsmanship is very powerful, and his comprehensive combat power should not be weak. If he cooperates, we should be able to kill the pirate at the back. She thought in her heart and accelerated towards Rhodes. A spare is different from actual combat. A spare is only a test of swordsmanship, as well as physical fitness and other related qualities. But in actual battles, there are more things involved. Haki, physical skills, fruit ability, even the one's wool, and the surrounding environment. These factors are enough to affect the direction of a battle. Still, it's quite embarrassing. Looking at this beautiful girl with a flushed face, while panting in front of him, Rhodes smiled and said, "Damn." Anne was in a hurry, she glared at Rhodes fiercely, and quickly instructed, "You are responsible for holding him back, I will attack." After she finished speaking, she turned to face the pirate swordsman who was charging at high speed with a cold expression. Regardless of Rhodes' identity or age, Anne couldn't ask Rhodes to do something dangerous. After all, the enemy is a powerful and lethal swordsman. Death may not occur, but if he breaks an arm or a leg or something, how will she explain this to Zephyr? How can she explain it to Jun? I'm being underestimated. Rhodes shook his head slightly, took a step forward suddenly, and said, "It's better to leave it to a man to fight and kill. Girls just have to stay behind and be responsible for being beautiful." Before she could respond to this, Anne felt a gust of wind blowing by her side, and her long smooth blue hair fluttered in the wind. The young man, whom she was responsible for protection, rushed towards the opposite side like this. "You are courting death. Why is he so fast?" Anne thought as she watched 2 sword-wielding figures collide. She could only hear the sound of Kang. When the 2 swords collided, the aggressive pirate swordsman flew out like straw, while spitting out a mouthful of blood in the air, unable to hold the blade in his hand, and flew out and fell to the ground in the distance. And Rhodes didn't stop there, and instantly flashed and reached the sky above pirate swordsman. The swordsman let out a tragic roar, folded his hands in front of him, and Rhodes stepped down. His foot, like a falling meteor, smashed the defense of the swordsman, and instantly cracked the floor beneath him open. Boom! The ground exploded. The pirate was slammed heavily on the ground, opening a big hole in the street. His chest was deeply sunken as if he had been hit by a 1,000-ton cannonball, and his heart was shattered. With such serious injuries, he obviously didn't last a second. With 1 slash and 1 kick, the strong enemy has been defeated. Anne didn't even have time to change her expression, and she looked like she was still angry because Rhodes rushed out and ignored her orders. The breeze was bleak, and a puff of fine dust on the ground was blown up slightly. The scene fell silent for a while. Anne was still silent and in deep shock, her big and bright eyes vibrated violently as if she had seen a ghost. This strength is too exaggerated. Are you really 17 and not 70? Anne was stunned. She could naturally see the various abilities that Rhodes exposed at that moment. He had far better haki, extraordinary speed and strength, and a power that looked a bit like lightning. With all of these put together, Rhodes doesn't actually need more than 2 or 3 moves to kill her. This was too shocking. After a while, Anne returned back to her senses, and she muttered angrily to herself. Originally, she thought he was just more talented than her. She didn't expect his real combat power to be stronger than hers, much stronger. Wow, this is so frustrating. Chapter 56. Reinforcement. The Marines at this time were in a state of disconnection. The 3 admirals of the Golden Generation, as well as many vice-admirals and rear-admirals, have gradually entered their middle age, but the young generation that has been training to take their positions has fallen into a more embarrassing situation, and they seem to be unable to catch up to them. With Anne's talent and strength, in this generation of Marines, she can be considered one of the next leaders. Some other people are stronger than her, but not much stronger. Growing up in such an environment, Anne's confidence is naturally quite high, and she never felt much pressure from her peers. But today, she suffered a sudden blow to the guts. After losing to Rhodes in a spare, she still convinced herself that the gap was that big. She thought he only defeated her because he was a disciple of a great swordsman, but what she just saw made her finally understand that no matter what she says, the gap between the two is really huge. How can there be such a perversion? Anne whispered, no wonder he was accepted as an apprentice by Vice Captain Jun. You must know that Admiral Jun, as one of the few powerful women in the Marines and even in the world, has always regarded herself very highly. It is said that she has rejected Vice Admiral Chaton, who is also a candidate for the admiral position, 100 times. At this time, Rhodes, who simply killed the enemy, didn't know that this girl had gone through a long mental journey in a blink of an eye. He slowly came to Anne and said, "Have you seen the top coder Harmon and others?" Oh. Anne was slightly stunned by Rhodes' sudden question, and immediately responded. "If you didn't encounter him on that route, then neither did I when coming down here. It's very likely that they met with Shizo and the others." Before departure, Anne and other commandos each were assigned to defend a specific area and tried their best to prevent the coders of the Devil Pirates from going to the frontal battlefield. The overall tactical idea is probably to concentrate their forces to clean up the battlefield and then attack the pirate coders. It is impossible for Shizo to defeat Harmon with his personal strength, but he shouldn't encounter trouble holding him back. Besides, Binz is not far from him. Anne knew her friend's abilities very well and said confidently. Binz is a have the grow devil fruit ability. Although he is not strong in frontal combat, he is very good at controlling and defending. As for Shizo, he is strong physically and has a powerful haki. When the two cooperated in the past, they successfully contained many strong men similar to Harmon. I'm afraid it's not that simple this time. Rhodes shook his head. Unlike Anne, who was restrained by that pirate swordsman, Rhodes cleaned the area he was in charge of, and noticed some members who obviously did not belong to the Devil Pirates. They were stronger and more arrogant, and of course, they died even more miserably. If my information is correct, the members of the Dong Quixote family are also participating in this battle. At this time, it is not just Harmon that Shizo and others are facing. The Dong Quixote. Anne's tone became a little sharp, and she said quickly. Then let's hurry up and help them. The Dong Quixote family is not easy to mess with. She was anxious and worried. The Dong Quixote family is famous in the whole New World, and it has such a strong commander. According to Anne's estimation, they wouldn't send one of their elite officers to conduct an underground transaction, but still, they should be really strong. Shizo and the others can hold back a Harmon-level powerhouse, but if they're facing the two of them, I'm afraid the line of defense will collapse. As Anne expected, Shizo and Binz's situation was very bad. If they were not fortunate enough to come across a green field with many flowers and trees that Binz used to build a line of defense, I am afraid they would have been defeated long ago. In fact, the reason that he could persist until now is that the leader on the opposite side suddenly stopped, leaving only a few pirate officers attacking. How about it? Have you thought about it? Lao Ji looked solemn, with a faint hint of oppression. Spark is surely going to die. Zephyr and Jun joined forces, he can't escape. Even if we go to support, it won't change the fact that he's done. Your business ability and combat effectiveness are very good. I will recommend you to the young master. After Lao Ji learned who besieged Spark, he clearly understood that the collapse of the devil pirates was inevitable. Even if they can defeat the Marines on the frontal battlefield, Jun and Zephyr are enough to sweep the entire pirate island, and no one will survive. Harmon's eyes flickered, and he was a little tangled. After all, the two used to be partners in the sea. Can you give me time to think about it? Lao Ji said coldly. If you wait until they finish Spark off, you won't be able to run away. Harmon was shocked when he heard these words. He took a deep breath and said, "Do you have any idea how we will escape? The port has already been occupied by the Marines." Lao Ji said indifferently. "You don't have to worry about that. Let's get rid of these two annoying kids first." "Yes." Harmon showed a hint of respect. Since he decided to join him, of course, he had to do a good job on the battlefield. He took the lead and walked forward. At this moment, the accident happened. A blue-haired woman suddenly joined the battlefield. Took advantage of the surprise effect and slapped a pirate cotter back by 12 years, and then beheaded him with her dagger. "Damn you!" Harmon was furious and rushed up in an instant. These pirate cotters are all his confidants, and they will also be the team he raises in the ranks of the Don Quixote family in the future. How can he bear it when one of them dies in front of his eyes? However, the moment he rushed out, a dazzling sword chi suddenly burst through, tearing the air apart, causing an extremely harsh whistling sound. "What?" Although Harmon was a bit surprised, he still managed to block it. With his fists wrapped in a dark and shiny Busashoku haki, he slammed his fist onto the sword energy that was rushing toward him without showing weakness. Boom! When his fist and sword energy collided, Harmon's face changed colors instantly. His burly body was pushed on the ground forcibly for a full 7 or 8 meters, and his black face turned red. "Bring it on!" With a loud roar, he stomped with his feet, stabilizing his body, and at the same time he threw out another fist, which shattered the incoming sword energy. Chi! The aftermath of the shattered sword chi swept across all directions, cutting the ground with dense tiny cracks. The scene was extremely frightening. Harmon took a breath with his eyes full of shock. What a terrifying sword energy! Could it be that a senior swordsman, or even a top swordsman, has also come here? With a solemn expression, he raised his head to look in the direction of the sword chi, and then saw a young and handsome man, standing with a sword in his hand, looking at him indifferently. Chapter 57. Lightning Rage. The battlefield fell silent for a while. The light wind that blew seemed to pierce the heart with a bit of chill as the white-robed swordsman appeared. The remaining pirate officers quickly retreated behind Harmon and looked at the traces on the ground with great fear. This sword knocked back the strong Harmon so far. If he attacks they will definitely die. Even Lao Ji in the distance was shocked. He quickly flashed and came to Harmon's side, standing side by side with him. Combining their strength is the answer, only then will they faintly overwhelm the other side. When did the Marines find such a powerful young man? Lao Ji looked solemn. The Don Quixote family has hands and eyes on both the world government and the Marines' movements. It stands to reason that if there are newcomers of Rhodes level in the Marines, they should be well known by them long ago. You must kill him now. Lao Ji's slightly old face showed a hint of ruthlessness and determination. The birth of a new super strong soldier in the Marines is definitely not what Doflamingo wants to see. Right now is the best time to kill him. At this time, Anne finally found Shizo and Binz. At this time, the two looked pale, bleeding from the corners of their mouths, covered in scars, and their bodies were extremely exhausted. Especially Binz, who had overused his abilities. However, at this time, the two did not care about their injuries, they were both dumbfoundedly looking at the figure holding swords. My God, what kind of strength is this? Binz couldn't close his mouth. Previously, when they fought Harmon, the guy was like a madman, knocking out the toughest plant under his control with one punch. His power was unbelievable. But one slash from Rhodes's sword forced Harmon back abruptly, and he needed both fists to stop. What power this is! This kind of destructive power is nothing less than the level of vice captain. Shizo stared at the sword marks on the ground, and then murmured after a while. I know the vice captain Momanga very well. I have seen him cut off the pirate ships with one sword. He can be called a top swordsman. Even if Rhodes' swordsmanship is not as good as Momonga's, I am afraid it is not too far away. His potential is really scary. Looking at the reactions of Shizuo and Binz, Anne had an inexplicable sense of relief. Sure enough, it's not that I'm too weak, but that guy is just a monster. Shizuo wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth, stood up, looked at the battlefield, and calmly analyzed. Swordsman's destructive power is indeed unparalleled, but both of his opponents are first-class powerhouses with a strong vitality and amazing endurance. If they drag this battle for a long time, I am afraid that Rhodes will be unable to withstand the pressure and flaws will be revealed. Let's hurry up and contact Adjutant Eleanor and ask her to dispatch some people to help. By now, the frontal battlefield should have gained an overall advantage. Shizuo's combat experience is extremely rich, and he makes the most prudent decision in an instant. Okay. Anne nodded slightly. Anne quickly took out a den mushi. While Anne was contacting Eleanor, the battlefield also ignited quickly. Lao Ji and Harman rushed in from the left and right and surrounded Rhodes from both sides. After forming a siege, they rushed forward. This proved to everyone that they were taking this seriously. Since Lao Ji decided to kill Rhodes here, Harman naturally wouldn't refute, he wouldn't dare to ignore the words of this veteran cotter. As far as he knows, Lao Ji was very prestigious in the Dongquixote family. If it weren't for his old age, Lao Ji would have become a top cotter long ago. Certainly. Most importantly, Harman felt that it would not take them a lot of effort to deal with the young man Rhodes if they join forces. After all, Rhodes is young. Young means that his physique has not been honed to the peak, and his Busashoku haki will definitely not be too strong. In this way, the attack is high and the defense is low. When the two masters of physical art are fighting at a close distance, it is easy to find opportunities, obtain results, and kill the enemy. Almost at the moment when Lao Ji and Harman rushed over, Rhodes moved. Soru. The moment he stepped, his body instantly turned into an afterimage, rushing out like lightning. Facing the siege of the two, he was very calm, he held his sword tightly in his hand, and slashed out without any fancy moves. Lightning style, smite. This technique, which combines swordsmanship with the power of thunder, was first used when he was in the reserve force a long time ago to cut off that pirate ship. But he got much stronger since then, with Rhodes' swordsmanship and the power of thunder now, what kind of power will burst out when uses it? Boom! The moment the tip of his blade fell, the heaven-shattering sword chant resounded through the fields instantly, covering the sky and the ground. The attack was as fast as a streamer, and it swept in all directions. Lao Ji and Harman had no time to dodge. They could only use hardening to protect the body, and counter-attack it at the same time. Iron Fist. Cracking Mountain Fist. Zzzz. The thunder roared and roared, the lightning arc was dazzling, and the thunder was deafening. Lao Ji and Harman were instantly swallowed up in it. Anne hung up the phone when the thunder roared. At this time, seeing this earth-shattering scene, she felt a little tingling sensation on her skin, and she couldn't even hold the den and mushi in her hands and fell to the ground. The poor phone bug didn't have time to complain about the master's ruthlessness, it immediately squirmed and hid behind Anne, shrinking into its shell and shivering. What's going on? Shizuo and Bin stared at this scene in astonishment, as if they had seen the most incredible thing. The power of his lightning is too exaggerated. The few remaining pirate officers were still thinking of attacking Anne and the other two, but when they saw this terrifying scene, they instantly lost their minds and hurriedly retreated. Under the incredible gaze of everyone. Bang! Two dark figures flew out of the thunder for more than 10 meters before they smashed the ground. It can be seen that neither Lao Ji nor Harman survived this attack. Their fists that were used to block this attack were severely damaged, and the rest of their body, which was usually as resistible as mountains, was also trembling slightly, and some places were blackened. With one slash, two physical artist masters were wounded. Lao Ji looked at the young man in white, who was bathed in lightning in the distance with a dreadful expression. Rhodes' outstanding power didn't actually give him the desire to retreat, instead strengthened Lao Ji's killing intent towards Rhodes. He decided that even if he sacrificed his life for it, he must kill him here. He must be killed. Lao Ji ordered coldly, with murderous intent in his tone. Behead him, and I guarantee you can become a cotter of the Dongquixote family. Harman took a breath upon hearing Lao Ji's promise, his impetuous mind instantly stabilized, and murderous intent also appeared in his eyes. Although Rhodes is strong, he is not irresistible. The biggest advantage of physique masters is their strong resistance. As long as they find opportunities, their chances of winning are still very high. Chapter 58. Showing no weakness. Frontal battlefield. Eleanor stood on the top of a tall building, with a solemn expression, unlike her usual goofy self. Just now, under her leadership, the defense line of the devil pirates was quickly broken by the Marines, and what was left is only some sporadic resistance. Understood. Eleanor hung up on Anne and snorted softly, "What a worry-free guy." Lao Ji and Harmon joined forces, even Eleanor has to treat this seriously now. However, this little guy turned out to be really tough. Well, it's a little impulsive, but it's only in line with his age. Furthermore, I guess watching him being beaten can change my bad temper. Eleanor smiled. Rhodes was usually too calm, like an old wise man who saw through the world, which was a bit annoying. Eleanor quickly dispatched some guards out of the battlefield and moved toward Rhodes' locations, while explaining the situation to the others. "Hey, someone dares to bully our Rhodes, let's beat them!" one of the girls shouted aggressively. Hey, are you okay?" Harmon is a senior cotter of the Devil Pirates, and Lao Ji is also one of the core cotters of the Dong Quixote family. He is very powerful. The girl who spoke earlier laughed. "Oh, and isn't Eleanor with us?" Eleanor was expressionless and said nothing. She was obviously used to this group of unscrupulous guards. She turned around in a dashing manner, then everyone laughed and quickly followed. In the eyes of these people, Rhodes is not only the apprentice of their beloved Lieutenant General Jun but also a younger brother who needs to be cared for and loved. This has nothing to do with strength, it's just Rhodes' age, which makes these female Marine sailors have their maternal love overflowing. Of course, the most important thing is that Rhodes is handsome, and also cute. Lao Ji's tactical intentions were clear and threatening, but unfortunately, he encountered Rhodes. Rhodes' strength is indeed not as strong as that of Lao Ji, and his Busa Shokuhaki is not as well tempered as the two of them, but it is by no means as they thought. It turned out that defeating Rhodes will take more than just dragging this fight for a long time. Besides, in lightning mode, Rhodes' speed is enhanced, while Lao Ji will be eroded by the lightning that Rhodes unscrupulously unleashed. Although they are strong and have amazing resistance, they will always be a little paralyzed, affecting their performance. With one increase and one decrease, Rhodes dealt with them very easily. Seal of G. Lao Ji forcibly smashed through the lightning and rushed toward Rhodes, then instantly threw his fist, taking the form of the letter G, at him. Rhodes' response was also very simple. He retreated slightly, and at the same time holding the sword in both hands, he suddenly slashed horizontally. One sword flow flash. Of course, such a slash would have been fatal if it were another swordsman. If Hawkeye were the one facing Lao Ji, it would be possible to cut open an island with a single strike, and it would be even easier to split the mountain and the sea. Although Rhodes is not as good as Hawkeye, the power of this slash should not be underestimated. Scoff. The pitch-black blade brought an astonishing tearing sound, smashing through Lao Ji's messy boxing skills, and sent him flying out, leaving a terrifying bloodstain on his body. Without chasing after him, Rhodes' expression moved slightly, as if he had noticed something. Whoosh! With a flash of lightning, he disappeared in place. Almost at the next instant, Harmon appeared in this position, and the punch that was supposed to hit Rhodes had to hit the ground because he lost his target. Boom! Harmon retracted his fist and it was a large pit of several meters in diameter left behind. The depth of this pit demonstrated the amazing power of Harmon. Even Rhodes admired it, but he was not as good as him. Having such strength doesn't make you a master of physical art. A true physique expert can exert his strength perfectly, and his control is extremely ingenious. Just like the war in the original book, the captain of the 3rd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, Diamond Yozo took the slash of the world's largest swordsman Hawkeye head-on and knocked out a hill of ice with a punch. Although Harmon's control is not as good as Diamond Yozo's, it's still very good. It is no wonder that Lao Ji will invite him. Pity. No matter how strong he is, or how good his control is, it is still empty talk if he can't beat Rhodes. Whoosh! Depending on his lightning mode, Rhodes flashed behind Harmon and suddenly slashed out with his sword. In the previous collision, Rhodes was keenly aware that Harmon was the breakthrough point of this battle. Because Harmon's Kanbun Shokuhaki seems to be weak, especially when he is surrounded by thunder. As predicted. When Rhodes flashed not far behind Harmon, he couldn't react until the blade was down. At that moment, Harmon was suddenly shocked by the sharp sword energy coming at him, but it was too late to dodge. She. The silver sword energy hit Harmon's black body, and there were bursts of harsh sounds like cutting steel. Harmon's Kanbun Shoku Haki was slightly weaker, but his Busa Shoku Haki was extremely strong. He persisted for 2 moments before the sword energy finally cut through his haki, tearing open his skin, and severing his flesh and blood. Rhodes could even faintly see pale bones. But these 2 short moments were enough to make Harmon act. He slammed his foot down, and bounced to the side, avoiding the follow-up attack of the sword chi. Scoff! The dazzling sword energy continued to sweep forward, tearing apart the earth, and then crashed into a small 3-story building, slicing it in half. This terrifying destructive power stunned Anne and the others who were watching the battle from a distance. Moreover, this battle situation seems to be a bit wrong. Shouldn't it be Rhodes who is being crushed and beaten? Why does it seem like? Anne and the other 2 looked at each other and they couldn't help but show some shock. Lao Ji and Harmon may not be considered super strong in the New World, but they are definitely famous pirates, and they are enough to be called strong in any place. But these 2 famous pirates, even after they joined their efforts, still couldn't defeat Rhodes. It can even be said that they were pressed and beaten by Rhodes. Crackling. Under everyone's attention, Lao Ji and Harmon attacked frantically, constantly rushing toward Rhodes, punching, and kicking, even hitting with their heads, and biting with their teeth. Up to now, these 2 strong physique practitioners have been struggling. Lao Ji is a long-established powerhouse, but he was suppressed by a young man today. If it spreads out, he will probably be laughed at by his opponent for a lifetime. He couldn't stand it. To this extent, Rhodes was not unscathed, and all that they could get from him is a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. This last attempt was a perfectly coordinated attack by Harmon and Lao Ji, and even when they caught Rhodes off guard he once again survived. His offensive power did not diminish in the slightest, and it even became more insane, and fierce. He's showing now weakness. Chapter 59 Escape. Most of the high-ranked pirates in this world are rough-skinned, and bulky-shaped, which comes with amazing vitality. Big showdowns between these powerhouses can even last for 3 days and 3 nights or even 10 days and 10 nights. Even though Rhodes suppressed Harmon and Lao Ji during the battle, you can say that their lives have never been in danger throughout this confrontation. However, because of some of the injuries Rhodes caused them, the fierceness of Lao Ji and Harmon aroused. The 2 of them got mad and fought more and more crazy. At some point, they looked more like beasts and didn't pay any attention to their fighting styles. The main goal was to hit Rhodes even if it means being hurt by his sword. In this case, Rhodes, as an elegant swordsman, avoided such clashes with them. With the speed advantage of the thunder mode, he moved at a high speed like a ghost, traversing the battlefield. Boom! However, with the monstrous powers that allowed them to crack the round open with a single kick, Lao Ji and Harmon tried to block his path. As a physical expert, Shouzo couldn't help but express his admiration watching the battle. However, surely, the ferocity of the 2 was certainly shocking. Each punch and kick had great power, but the most eye-catching thing on the entire battlefield was the young figure with a sword. The violent power of thunder roared and roared, wreaking havoc on the audience, and the dazzling sword chi swept across the 4 directions, tearing the earth. This exaggerated destructive power was obviously more than 1 step beyond Lao Ji and Harmon. At this point in the battle, the entire space of several hundred meters around was shaking and trembling as the 3 of them fought. Eleanor followed the movement with her personal guards, and when she finally got closer she couldn't help but feel stunned when she first saw the battlefield. Hey, I never heard of this. Brother Rhodes has such a strong power of thunder. Oh, bad, my heart skipped a heartbeat looking at him. No, it's just that you were electrocuted. The guards all took a deep breath, and then relaxed and got playful with each other. Not only his swordsmanship is outstanding, but his combat power is also so strong. What kind of apprentice did Vice Captain Jun accept? Eleanor's face was indifferent, but she couldn't help complaining in her heart. As the number 1 apprentice under Jun's command, she had a sense of pride before even though she had never been truly accepted as her disciple. Now it seems that she is about to be taken over. The battlefield at this time. As the battle continued to heat up and the injuries on the body gradually deepened, Lao Ji and Harman gradually came to their senses and had to sadly admit a fact. That is, the two of them will not be able to defeat Rhodes together. If they drag on, they may even be killed by Rhodes. After admitting defeat, the mentality of these two determined physique masters changed very quickly. There's nothing to be discouraged about, just run if you can't beat him. It's not like you haven't run before. As a pirate, who hasn't been chased by the Marines? It's pretty normal. The two looked at each other from a distance and were about to implement their escape plan. However, Rhodes was keenly aware of this change in their mentality. His Kanbunshoku may not be as perceptive as Jun's, but with the bonus of perception attributes, his perceptual ability is actually not weak, and he can capture a lot of details. Want to leave? Then you must first ask this sword for permission. A cold light flashed in Rhodes' eyes. In a matter of fact, his physical strength has also been seriously consumed. If he really keeps fighting, it is still unknown who will die first. But since the opposite party admits the council first, he will naturally not miss this opportunity to pursue and expand the victory. Crackling. Rhodes channeled the power of thunder in his body to the extreme. The lightning, which had gradually calmed down before, suddenly became violent, like an earth dragon turning over and sweeping in all directions. Almost at the moment when Harman turned around and was about to escape, the ground under Rhodes's feet cracked open. Chi! In an instant, there seemed to be a flash of blue electric light. Bathed in lightning, while taking advantage of this change in Harman's mentality, Rhodes flickered like a ghost, came to the front, and stabbed straight out with his sword. The dazzling lightning gathered on the tip of the sword was compressed to the extreme, and even made the body of the sword hum and vibrate, as if it was unbearable. This strike was silent. Because of its speed, the sound was left behind. At this moment, Harman's thinking was unprecedentedly clear, and the time seemed to slow down. Damn it! Hurry up! There was despair and fear in his eyes, he could see it and he wanted to avoid it, but his body was already scarred by this long battle and eroded by lightning. He could only watch it piercing his chest. Ho ho ho! Blood started coming out of his mouth, mixed with some pieces of internal organs. Harman glanced at the sword thrust in his chest, and then pulled out a wry smile with some difficulty. Sure enough, the betrayers have no good end? At the last moment of his life, Harman's eyes were dazed, but he felt an inexplicable sense of relief in his heart. Even if he died, at least he wouldn't feel embarrassed or guilty when he meets his big brother in the afterlife. This young swordsman is really powerful, and it is estimated that he will become a world-famous swordsman in the future. In this way, if I die at the hands of such a person, I should have no regrets. If you can't be the strongest, you will be killed by the strongest. Harman thought so, and the look in his eyes gradually faded. There was no unwillingness, only relief. As Rhodes drew out his long sword, Harman's burly body trembled, and then fell to the ground like a pillar of jade. Silence. Everyone stared blankly at this scene. Suppression and killing are two completely different situations. The stronger the existence, the more he will be capable of killing such strong people. Before that, Anne and the other two witnessed the whole process of Rhodes pressing Lao Ji and Harman during the fight, but they never thought that Rhodes could actually kill one of them. Initially, they thought that it will only be possible with the arrival of Adjutant Eleanor, and in the end, they may even leave these two fiercely famous pirates retreat. They never expect. Not far away, when Lao Ji saw this scene, he subconsciously retracted and stopped to help, but it just happened too fast for him to even do anything. After this, there was only one thought in his mind. Escape, you must escape. Lao Ji felt an inexplicable sense of urgency. When they both fought, they were suppressed. One-on-one, Harman was killed within seconds. He estimated that it would not be long before he would be killed. At this moment, Lao Ji's desire to survive skyrocketed in his heart. His eyeballs suddenly swelled, blood shot all over his body, and blue veins appeared on his bald head. Lao Ji turned around and ran towards the island, trying to escape the pursuit with the help of complex buildings. In the blink of an eye, Lao Ji left this ruined battlefield and stepped into the alley, and that's when he felt a bit of relief. A leisurely voice suddenly came from midair. Those who dare to hurt our little brother should be buried here. Chapter 60. Ending. Eleanor's battle against Lao Ji went very well. On the one hand, Lao Ji has been really worn off by Rhodes, his physical strength has been severely exhausted and his condition was not good. On the other hand, Eleanor herself is a senior swordsman, who can easily have the upper hand in a one-on-one battle. Moreover, she also had a lot of assistants with her, especially a few beautiful snipers. This fierce battle ended with the arrest of Lao Ji. Hi! Standing in the ruins, Rhodes let out a sigh of relief. There was a burst of fatigue and pain all over his body, but he was quite excited as if he had just come out of an internet cafe after an all-nighter. The enemies are getting stronger and stronger. Rhodes sheathed his sword and shook his head helplessly. In the world of pirates, anyone who's called strong is actually considered a monster. However, strength, speed, and endurance are nothing without the mastery of haki. Kanbunshoku haki and Busashoku haki alone are enough to make you invulnerable. And even if you lack power compared to your opponent, you will be able to drag the battle longer and make an escape route. Moreover, Rhodes has one more major point: he's now a very powerful swordsman. If he is like Luffy who relies only on his fists, it is estimated that he wouldn't win the previous battle. No wonder Aokiji and Akainu could fight for 10 days and 10 nights, and even change the climate of an entire island. However, we also have someone like Kaido who's known for being the strongest creature in the sea. The existence of an immortal may be even more frightening. Rhodes rested for a while and managed to recover a little. While thinking wildly, he walked towards Anne and the others. "Are you all right?" Looking at the pale faces of Shuzo and the other two, Rhodes asked casually. Shuzo and the other two had black lines all over their heads. Is he boasting? "Hey, I can tell what are you guys thinking." Looking at the expressions of these guys, Rhodes reacted and pouted. "Am I that kind of person? You've just seen how strong I am, why do I need to brag?" Only then did Shuzo and Bins realize that they had misunderstood, and they scratched their heads in embarrassment and said, "We're okay, we should be able to recover after a few days of rest." Oh! Rhodes originally wanted to show off his medical skills, but after listening to the two of them, after he heard their answer he felt a bit disappointed. At this time, the frontal battle was over, the second leader of the enemy was slaughtered, and Lao Ji was also arrested, so only the great pirate Spark was left. However, judging from the faint tremors on the ground, it seems that Spark should still be stubbornly resisting. "Right. I heard that this guy is an ancient animal type ability person. He should be very strong. Even if he is not as good as Jack of the Beast Pirates, he should be a super big muscle tyrant." At this time, Eleanor walked over slowly. She was dressed as a true commander, wearing a straight-fitting Marine's uniform, with a thin sword hanging from her waist. She wasn't her goofy self anymore, and she even looked elegant. Rhodes couldn't help but take a few more glances at her, showing admiration. "I can see it. You have the potential to be a captain. Everyone, this time you have done a great job," Eleanor said with a serious tone, then looked at Rhodes. "Beheading Harmon, the top cotter, and helping to arrest Lao Ji, one of the cotters of the Dong Quixote family, is a great achievement." Eleanor was expressionless, but a complex color flashed in her eyes. She felt sorry that Rhodes would leave soon. "I'm not from the Marines, and the credit is yours to take." Rhodes waved his hand and said casually. "What?" Anne and the other two looked slightly surprised. They didn't say anything, but they didn't expect that the apprentice of a vice-captain wouldn't be from the Marines. Eleanor didn't want to bring up this subject, so she quickly asked, "We're going to clean the battlefield, free the slaves, and escort the pirates, how about you?" Rhodes wanted to go back to the warship to rest, but after thinking about it, he might as well go and watch the battle between those guys. The Battle of the Great Swordsman. Previously, it was just a surprise in Kronos Island, and it was only 2 small shrimps that were chopped by Jun. This time, he had to observe it carefully. When Anne heard the words, her expression was also lifted, and she quickly raised her hand and said, I'm going to. It is difficult for any swordsman to resist the temptation to watch the Battle of the Great Swordsman. Okay, but pay attention to your position, and don't get too close. Eleanor said lightly. That's it. Shuzo and Bins went back to recover from their injuries, and Rhodes went to watch the battlefield. East of the island. This place was originally a lush jungle, but now its appearance has changed greatly. Mountains and forests were shattered, debris everywhere, the ground was cracked, and at the same time, there were terrifying abysses here and there. Although Spark is a thick-skinned guy, it also depends on who he is facing. In the face of the sharp slash of Jun, the great swordsman, his burly body was covered with deep sword marks. Several of them were the kind of scars that can be seen deep in the bone. Damn it! I won't die here! Spark roared angrily. Facing both Jun and Zephyr, he didn't have the slightest power to fight back. Also, that woman's attacks were too sharp. Moreover, as an experienced soldier, Black Arm Zephyr is experienced and has an extremely precise grasp of timing, which often opens Spark's defense to Jun's sword. The tacit understanding between these two is incomparable. Lao Ji and Harmon are not even worthy of carrying their shoes, they are not on the same level at all. The three moved quickly and fought fiercely. Smoke and dust rose to the sky which obscured Rhodes and Anne's vision. They could only see that the area was ruined. Is this the sensei's true combat power? This destructive power is too strong. Rhodes stood on the top of a tall building, looking at the sword marks running through the sea from a distance. He couldn't help showing a look of amazement. Teacher Zephyr was also very powerful before, no, he's still powerful. Anne pouted, feeling a little frustrated. When Zephyr lost his arm in order to protect them, his strength was greatly damaged, and Anne always felt guilty for it. Rhodes was dumbfounded. Looking at this sentimental little girl, he couldn't help but smile and said. Of course, as a former admiral of the Marines, Zephyr Blackarm was a hero of the same era as the others like Garp, Roger, and Whitebeard. No one can question his strength. It's a pity that time is a butcher's knife, and no matter how powerful an individual is, in front of the power of time, they are all insignificant like dust. Anne snorted lightly, and nodded her head slightly with satisfaction, then said. If it weren't for his lost arm, which caused a series of complications, Master Zephyr's strength would never be much weaker than Vice Captain Garp's. Injuries of the same degree in different periods have different effects. He can't be compared to red-haired Shanks who lost his arm during his heyday, even then he still stood firmly on the throne of the Yonko as if nothing had happened. Zephyr is old, and losing an arm was simply an end of an era. Chapter 61. Separation. In this world, people who are called the strongest are simply monsters. Any confrontation between these monsters will last for days. From Rhodes' point of view, age probably doesn't affect the combat effectiveness of these monsters too much. But it will make the strongest man in the world in a way vulnerable. It's just like the elderly are prone to diseases. Illnesses, injuries, and side effects that were completely ignored in their youth become extremely serious in old age. This symptom is most real in Whitebeard. The strongest man in the world couldn't use his powers properly anymore. The side effect of Gura Gura no Mi became too strong for his body, and every time it is used, it will damage him more. But when Whitebeard was young, it didn't seem to be a problem, or even exist, thus establishing the name of the strongest man in the world. However, since the beginning era of the Great Pirates, he gradually grew old, but he still had to face an endless stream of challengers, among which Kaido is the craziest. As a result, the side effects broke his body, affecting the strongest man in the world in all aspects, making him constantly weak, and he even ended up relying on medicines to maintain his life in the later stage. In stark contrast, Garp, the hero of the same era as Whitebeard, hardly encountered any hard battles, because of the conservative decision of the world government on the New World. His daily routine was to stay at the Navy headquarters, eat donuts in the Fleet Admiral's office, occasionally go to the East Sea to train his grandson, and throw a few cannonballs to bully the little pirates, etc. In this way, it was natural for him to maintain a near-peak combat power, and at the war, he even had the confidence to hammer Akainu's head. According to Rhodes' speculation, in order to still maintain near-peak combat power in old age, the only way is to not be injured, especially the severe injury of losing a leg and a hand, and of course not to rely on an ability like the Gura Gura no Mi that affects the internal organs of the body. But I'm only 17 years old, so I don't need to worry about this for the time being. Rhodes shook his head, cast aside these messy thoughts, and concentrated on watching the battle. At this time, the situation on the battlefield also changed a bit. It seems that since she sensed Rhodes' arrival, Jun's sword strikes and moves got slightly slower, much slower than usual, as if she was deliberately doing it for others to see. How experienced fighter Zephyr instantly sensed Jun's intentions and restrained Spark very cooperatively. On his always awe-inspiring face, he couldn't help but show a smile, and for the first time, he had a little sympathy for Spark. Poor Spark! The dignified big pirate of the New World, the man known as the Devil, has become a training puppet for Jun to demonstrate swordsmanship and teach her apprentices. Fuck, Sensei is mighty. How witty is Rhodes, he quickly noticed that, mentioned it to Anne in a low voice, and then focused on watching Jun demonstrate the swordsmanship. Two super strong men, cooperate with each other or cooperate with Jun to demonstrate swordsmanship. This kind of opportunity is too rare. Rhodes widened his eyes, trying to save every scene in his mind. It may not be of much use for the time being, but after all, it is one kind of experience. Only by accumulating a lot of experience can you become a great swordsman at the very top. After a few hours, after Spark fell to the ground tremblingly and regained his human form, this unique swordsmanship session came to an end. I hope you rot in jail. Zephyr took out the seafloor stone handcuffs and put them on Spark's wrists. The unique power contained in the seafloor stone instantly made Spark feel a wave of weakness in his body. He glanced at Zephyr's mechanical arm, squeezed a smirk, and mocked in an inexplicable tone. Black arm Zephyr, ho ho ho. So even after you lost your arm and family, you're still seeking the justice that the world government and celestial dragons found. You're just their faithful dog after all of this. Justice. What a pitiful justice that is. Knowing that he was destined to impel down, Spark wasn't afraid to provoke Zephyr at all. Jun looked angry when she heard this, and without any hesitation, she slapped consciousness out of Spark, who hit the ground bleeding from his nose and mouth. Zephyr-sensei. Don't worry, I understand. Zephyr waved his hand and said indifferently. The Marines focuses on the interests of the people and has its own judgment on justice. I will not be influenced by the words of these evil people. Not far away, Rhodes' expression changed slightly when he heard this, and he shook his head in his heart. This is a true hero, who dedicated his whole life to the Marines, suffering disasters and believing in justice, but in the end, he was betrayed by the world government, the Marines, and everything he believed in. Rhodes, who was an outsider in his previous life, didn't think too much about it, but when he came to this world in person, he had to make guesses. There are too many outstanding students taught by Zephyr. The 3 current admirals, most of the vice-admirals, and the captains were taught by him. It stands to reason that an existence like Zephyr will find an acquaintance wherever he goes. But it's a pity that Zephyr, the Marines, and the world government, have different ideas and conflicts. Perhaps because of Zephyr's character, he will not do anything to lead the Navy to mutiny, but the world government cannot ignore it and can only take precautions to force Zephyr away. Next was the cleaning of the entire island, which lasted for 3 full days. The great pirate Spark has been in business for 10 years, and the wealth accumulated is naturally very considerable, and can even be described as a mountain. And because it happened to be stuck at the time of the transaction with the Don Quixote family, the Marines harvested a batch of high-quality weapons and ammunition to contribute to the cause of justice. As for the imprisoned slaves, they were dealt with according to the relevant rules. On the warship, Rhodes looked at the numb slaves in the port, and even if they were rescued, their faces were still ashen, and he couldn't help but sigh sadly. In the past 3 days, he has also had the chance to visit the underground space of the island. It was so dark and terrible that it was almost indescribable in words. As a traveler from the modern world, of course, Rhodes disliked the slave system and the celestial dragons, which was why he accepted the revolutionary army so quickly. Darkness, cruelty, and oppression are everywhere, we can only do our best. Jun's cold and indifferent voice came, with a rare trace of imperceptible tiredness. Although the Marines are an armed force under the command of the world government, it is actually the only stability maintenance organization in this sea. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the hope of civilians. Eliminating this tumor, the Marines alone cannot do it. Rhodes knew that Jun was keeping him and hoped that he would join the Marines and inherit this just cause, but he had his own ideas and his own path. Sigh. Noticing Rhodes' expression, Jun sighed slightly, and the look in her eyes was a little dazed. Every pirate has his own dream, and so is the Marines. Demonstrate justice, punish wickedness, become a hero, protect people. As an admiral of the Marines, Zephyr is so powerless. She is only a candidate admiral, and her strength and status are not as good. What can she do? In the end, she said in a gentle and firm voice. No matter where you are and what your identity is, remember to keep in check your humanity, never cross that line. Otherwise, I'll be the first to catch you. Chapter 62. The Merchant Ship. Jun is a very good teacher. Regardless of her silky skin, beautiful face, and long legs, she is serious and enthusiastic when it comes to teaching, and she does not interfere too much with the students' life paths, so she can be called impeccable. You could have at least left me on a better island. Why leave me here? Rhodes was standing on the coast, feeling the cool sea breeze, complaining about his beautiful teacher. He and Sabo made an appointment for a meeting place, but Jun said that she running later, and she had to return to the G5 base in a straight line, so she found a manned island and threw Rhodes down. It seems that teacher Jun still has some resentment in her heart. Rhodes thought angrily, turned around, and walked towards the island, first to taste the island's special food. On the warship, Jun and Zephyr stood side by side, looking at the gradually smaller island from afar. With their good eyesight, they could even see Rhodes on the island. After a long time, Zephyr said, "Do you trust him that much? He is my disciple, how can I not believe in him?" Jun's tone was calm and expressionless, but there was a hint of reluctance and hope in her eyes. As Jun's first and possibly last disciple in her life, Jun really had great expectations for Rhodes, even though they have only been with each other for more than 3 months. Of course, Rhodes' talent also surprised her. But now that the apprentice is about to leave, there is always a touch of reluctance, hesitation and hope. As a top powerhouse, Jun knows very well, if she was kept under the protection of her teacher she would have never become a powerhouse, so she will not stop Rhodes from running alone. "I'm going for a rest." She stretched her body and returned to her warship. Only Zephyr was left standing here alone. "Rod boy! Don't let Jun down!" Zephyr murmured softly. Then out of the corner of his eyes he looked at Anne's dazed appearance on the lower deck. Due to the unique geographical environment of the pirate world, the islands around the world are very different in terms of the human landscape, technological level, and special food. This highly differentiated feature naturally breeds countless hard-headed merchants who travel to and from the major islands, buy and sell, and earn high profits. The island that Rhodes was on at this time was generally prosperous, and it also had several specialties. In particular, one of the types of hairy crabs is produced offshore of the island and has the size of a grinding plate. The meat is extremely delicious and tender. It is even more delicious when paired with the sauce specially prepared by the chef on the island. Rhodes had a big meal, and then took a walk to the port. He decided to board a merchant ship and head to the island where Sabo and Koala were at this time. There are many ships in the port, and many strong sailors are carrying supplies up and down. After wandering around for a while, Rhodes finally found a merchant ship with the same destination as his. However, there were many people around at this time. "What's the deal here?" Rhodes blinked and leaned over. "I heard that the caravan encountered a pirate group before coming here. After a bloody battle, they lost a lot of guards. This time they want to recruit some temporary guards." "A guard task?" Rhodes murmured lightly, "This is not bad, it just saves a fortune on the boat." He didn't have much money, and the only bellis on him were given to him by Jun, and he spent a lot of money just eating the hairy crabs. It's a pity that there are not many marine bases in the New World, otherwise, he could catch a few pirates to exchange for the bounty. The recruitment process is simple. It is to show strength and lift a heavy enough stone lock to be selected. This merchant ship seems to be quite famous. There are many burly men lining up to apply for jobs. When Rhodes lined up, many people looked over and smiled. "Young man, you have come to the wrong place." The man who spoke was 2.2 meters tall. He flexed his arms and posed in a standard bodybuilding posture, with exaggerated muscle outlines. Rhodes curled his lips, his expression was indifferent, and he was too lazy to pay attention to this idiot. Since Rhodes didn't answer him, the big man couldn't help showing a bit of resentment and stepped forward to test his strength. "Ha!" His whole body was agitated, his arms exerted strength, and he lifted the 1-meter-high stone lock directly above his head. Rhodes walked over naturally, picked up the heaviest and largest stone lock, and flung it lightly, and it flew more than 10 meters into the air. The scene was terrifying. The pier was dead silent, and everyone was shocked. How powerful is this young man exactly? The big man who showed off his muscles before was even more stunned and his face turned red. Even the young lady in charge of the record was startled. She got up quickly and led Rhodes to the deck with a red face. The captain is a bearded, middle-aged man, and has a strong sense of all corners. After he heard about Rhodes' power, he had a good attitude and directly arranged the best cabin for him. He didn't even mention the escort. Rhodes was very satisfied with this, and gave him 32 likes, saying that if he was in danger, he would help. Thank you very much. Watching the hatch close, the captain was relieved and straightened up. The young lady in the back asked suspiciously. Captain, even if he's strong enough to lift the heaviest stone, I've never seen you treat someone this way. Dare to do business in the Sea of the New World, the strength of the bearded man should not be underestimated, and he has many strong subordinates hired by him. Ordinary pirate groups won't have a chance against him. Being friends with such a young and strong man will never be a loss. Beard Guy smiled. Businessmen are the most important contacts. With Rhodes' age and potential, he might be able to come in handy in the future. Oh, I see. The little sister nodded in understanding. The merchant ships did not stay on this island for long, and they left the port that afternoon and set out for the depths of the sea. The performance of Rhodes throwing flying stone locks spread very quickly. This strength may not be much, but for most sailor guards, he is considered a strong man and is worthy of awe. Rhodes didn't care about this at all, and even rejected several young and beautiful girls sent by the beard guy. Apart from eating, he almost stayed in the cabin for thunder practicing every day. Because of the continuous deepening of the thunder body tempering, the muscles and bones were continuously strengthened, which fed back to the internal organs to a certain extent. Maybe it won't take long for him to use lightning to strengthen his internal organs. This will be a key node. The strengthening of the viscera will completely make up for Rhodes' last shortcoming, creating a flawless physique. The sea is so vast, and there may be people who master physical techniques similar to dark energy. Only when the internal organs are strengthened can the danger in this area be reduced to the greatest extent. In the dim cabin, a faint blue light flickered, and the air was filled with the smell of electric arcs. Rhodes closed his eyes and kept working hard. Chapter 63. The Rules of the Road. Today's new world is essentially leveling off, with constant skirmishes from all sides, but few wars involving the entire new world. After all, although the Yonko has grown bigger and mega-shattered the world, they have actually become some kind of warlord forces similar in nature to the world government. After all, it's natural for power to bring order. Only with order can the economy and technology be developed. For the vast majority of merchant ships, as long as they enter one of the Yonko's territories, it means that they will get a guarantee that they will at least not encounter too powerful idle pirates. Because most of the powerful pirate groups know exactly what it means to be up against one of the Yonko, so as soon as they enter their territories they won't cause any trouble. However, some of the new pirates whose rewards have just exceeded 100 million are more courageous. However, this kind of new pirate group won't scare the merchant ships. The captain of the merchant ship is a strong man himself, and he has some mercenaries by his side. His force is very powerful and considerable. Of course, businessmen are generally reluctant to break out into conflict, and they value peace. If you encounter a pirate group, you will usually first use force to deter them, and then you will be submissive to buy them with some money. Only when you are forced to, will a bloody battle occur. In the cabin, Rhodes closed his eyes, and a faint blue fluorescence appeared on his body. If he looked closely, the fluorescence was floating regularly, rippling like water waves. After a long time, the faint blue light gradually subsided. A pair of eyes suddenly opened, like two stars in the deep night sky, shining brightly. Rhodes stood up, stretched out his body, felt the enormous power contained in his body, and couldn't help but smile. Compared to the time he fought Harmon and Lao Ji who had almost defeated him before, his physical strength was slightly stronger. In general, he is still at the level of a rear admiral. If he wants to go further and surpass Lao Ji, and even reach the level of a vice admiral of the Navy headquarters, it is estimated that he has to rely on the strengthening of the internal organs, thereby driving the overall improvement, and stepping into a stronger field with the trend of perfection. Any existence of the vice admiral level of the Marines is a well-known powerhouse in this sea. They almost have no obvious shortcomings. Even on the battlefield of the top war level, they would shine. If it is said that the rear admiral level powerhouse is barely squeezed into the high level of the pirate world powerhouse echelon, then the existence of the vice admiral level is to stand firmly on this echelon. Even the most talented soldier in the reserve force may not be sure to reach this level. This level can even be said to be the limit of mortals, and one step further up, there are some real monsters. And with Rhodes' power of thunder and swordsmanship, once his physique enters the rank of vice admiral, his overall strength may immediately become one of a kind, and few people would be compared to him. It's still a few steps away, but I should get there soon. Rhodes murmured softly, his eyes a little expectant. The Yonko's Emperor Haki, the Shishibukai's unique devil fruits, and the secrets of the Gorosei, he's still far away. But taking it one step at a time can always narrow the distance. Pam pam. There was a knock on the door, so Rhodes opened the hatch. It was a red-haired young lady with a good appearance standing outside. This is the captain's daughter, Aisha. She seems to be very interested in the young, handsome, and powerful man, Rhodes. She visits from time to time to ask about swordsmanship. However, this woman is very sensible, and every time she gets hit by the wooden swords she cries, which does cause Rhodes bad feelings. I just knew that you woke up at this time. Did you know that you became the most mysterious person on the ship? Aisha glanced at Rhodes, her red lips were like fire, her chest was high, and she had a clear hint of seductive charm. However, after 3 months of time at the hot springs with the sisters, Rhodes' concentration reached an amazing level. He completely ignored Aisha's subtle temptation, turned around, and walked into the cabin, quickly putting on his shirt. Aisha looked at Rhodes' profile from behind, and the muscles that were twisted like steel wires, and couldn't help but lick her bottom red lip. He looks very hot, and his strength is inhuman, so if he does that, he should be really good at it, right? Thinking of this, her legs couldn't close together. In fact, it's not that Rhodes is really terribly handsome. Strictly speaking, he is ordinary handsome, but with the bonus of age and strength, and the comparison of the people around him, Aisha's senses were completely messed up. What are you thinking about? At some point, Rhodes came to her. No, nothing. Aisha hurriedly shifted her gaze while her face seemed to be burning with fever. God, what the hell is the old lady thinking? Although she followed her father on the sea since she was a child, Aisha is actually a girl who kept herself like a jade, and she has never had such an experience before. Rhodes didn't think too much, and said casually. Let's go, it's time to go to the restaurant for dinner. Okay, okay. Aisha took a deep breath and thought to herself, it's just that this guy is so attractive, it's definitely not that the old lady has low determination. That's right. Accidents will happen. Before reaching the restaurant, the ship, which was running steadily, suddenly jolted violently, and the lost-minded Aisha almost fell to the ground. Rhodes frowned slightly, picked up Aisha, and walked quickly to the deck. Before he got close, he heard a burst of shouting. A pirate group is approaching. Bombardment! Bombardment! Watch out for evasion! Watch out for evasion! We can't avoid it, get ready for a battle! The deck was chaotic. Under the command of the beard guy, the sailor guards quickly stabilized their hearts and performed their duties. Rhodes admired them and then looked at the sea in the distance. There was a large pirate ship riding the wind and waves with many vicious pirates on the deck wielding swords. It's really unfortunate. We usually don't encounter a pirate group when we take this route. On the side, Aisha murmured in a low voice, and said with some worry, I hope this time we can negotiate peacefully. Having said that, this guy already holds a gun in his left hand and a sword in his right, with a look of excitement on his face. He doesn't look like a peace-loving captain. Rhodes felt speechless hearing her saying that. The women who live in the sea are indeed very fierce. Koala is like this, Eleanor is like this, Jun is like this, and so are her guards. No one know what kind of black technology the pirate ship was equipped with, but it exploded suddenly and it quickly caught up with the merchant ship and began to forcibly board the ship. So that's how pirates rob. Looking at the pirates who jumped across 7 or 8 meters in midair, a few black lines appeared on Rhodes' forehead. It's really simple, rude, direct, and effective. Yes, this is piracy. Under the restraint of the whiskers, the two sides did not clash immediately. The pirates also knew the rules very well. They laughed and stayed on the deck, waiting for their captain to come over. Soon, 2 figures, one tall and one short, walked slowly over from the paved plank, walking like tigers, their eyes darkened, but they looked quite imposing. My rules are very simple. Fight these 2 and if we lose, we won't take a penny, and we will leave you in peace. If you can't beat them, just obediently hand over 90% of your belongings and beautiful women, and you can save a life. Chapter 64. Rhodes Inn. It was clear and sunny. But when these pirates boarded the ship, it got a bit chilly, and even the sun couldn't dispel it. The sailor guards swallowed with difficulty, their eyes were frightened, and some were even trembling. Miss Aisha, who seemed to be not afraid of the sky and earth, looked a little nervous. Without even noticing, Knuckles turned white from clenching her fist. It seems that this pirate group has a good reputation. Rhodes thought so in his heart, and couldn't help but stare. The two in the front are obviously twins, one is slightly taller, but they have the same face. If it weren't for the difference in height, it would be hard to tell them apart. Seemingly aware of Rhodes' doubts, Aisha said in a low voice but solemnly. They're from the twin pirates that has recently gained fame. Captain Bar and Vice Captain Bud are twin brothers. The two of them cooperate very well and are good at joint strikes. They even won against a powerful pirate with a reward of 170 million. The worst thing is, these two brothers are total perverts and like to torture beautiful women the most. Aisha clenched her fists, her face was as gloomy as water, and her eyes flashed with determination. If she's going to end up being captured, she would definitely jump into the sea to avoid humiliation. It's only 170 million, is it worth it to be so solemn? Rhodes pouted, someone with such a low bounty, Rhodes could kill him easily when he first debuted. The Silver Fox back then was almost at this level. Are you crazy? Aisha gave him a speechless look and was secretly disappointed in her heart. As expected, he was a young man who had never seen the world before. And this time, Bud was negotiating, he hummed in a low voice, while his face was full of flattery. Captain Bud, we can give you whatever you want, but just spare my family, can you do that? Oh, dear brother, as you already know, the quality of the female slaves caught last time was too poor to withstand the toss, but this time I have to add something. Bar smiled creepily. I see that there are a few good ones on your ship. His eyes swept across Aisha and smiled. Can't we have a good talk? Beard Guy gave up on peace, he didn't want to hand over his daughter. The rules are easy, you defeat us, and you will be free. Choose whoever you want, but don't you dare cry later. Bar sneered. If he hadn't noticed how this merchant ship was filled with mercenaries and didn't want to lose people, he wouldn't come up with such nonsense. However, Beard Guy's needed that hope, the look on his face was a little ugly, so he retreated, and said sincerely to a burly one-eyed man behind him. Mr. Nord, I can only rely on you, we will fight together. Nord was a well-paid mercenary hired by Beard. But at this time, Nord was obviously not too sure about this, his eyes were dodging a little as he said. We shouldn't act recklessly. Life is the most important thing. If your daughter is gone, you can give birth to another one. The prestige of the twin pirates was too great, he really didn't want to fight them, and didn't dare to collide with them, he just wanted to send these plague gods away as soon as possible. Hearing this, many sailor guards around started stepping back. No one wanted to collide with the twin pirates. The Beard Guy froze slightly when he heard these words, especially after feeling the gazes of the people around him, his expression was extremely ugly, and his fists were clenched tightly. Obviously, he won't just give up his daughter, he wants to go back to his hometown safely after this business trip with his daughter, he can't just accept this. He said to Nord in a pleading tone. Mr. Nord, just join me. If we couldn't win them, then you don't need to die trying, we will just submit, I won't force it. This. When Nord heard this, he couldn't help but hesitate. He was a little afraid that the twin brothers would become fierce after the fight and kill them anyway. It's just a one-time hire, and he won't lose his life for it. Beard Guy was tangled, and the twin pirates were not impatient. Everyone seemed to be watching the show, including the twin, and especially Bar, who seemed to like to torture other people and leave them in desperate situations. Rhodes stood on the upper deck, watching the farce below, and couldn't help shaking his head slightly. At first, he thought that these people could handle it, and didn't want to take action. After all, even if he defeats these little shrimps, he won't gain even a bit of an increase in the energy bar. Hey, why not? I'll just consider it a warm-up. What warm-up? Aisha turned her head suspiciously. But she found that Rhodes suddenly jumped up, drew a perfect arc in mid-air, and then landed on the bottom deck with a pop, right in the middle of the two sides. Everyone couldn't help but turn their heads to look, and then froze for a moment. Everyone on the merchant shipping side was a little surprised. This mysterious young man stayed in the cabin as soon as he got on the ship and rarely came out, but he was highly valued by the captain's father and daughter. Many sailors secretly envied him and wondered what is his deal. No one would have thought that on such an occasion, this young man would dare to stand up. Hasn't he heard of the vicious name of the twin pirates? Come back quickly! Aisha shouted nervously from above, for fear that this idiot would do something irreversible. Rhodes turned a deaf ear and walked forward with an expressionless face. Now that he has decided to make a move, naturally, he doesn't need any nonsense anymore. Whoosh! Before the pirates of the Twin Pirates could even have time to react, Rhodes suddenly disappeared in place. It didn't last more than a blink before that person appeared in front of the two brothers. One punch, one kick. Bang bang! The two famous brothers flew out like straws, spewing blood in the air, and then crashed into their own pirate ship. Their large pirate ship trembled, causing quite a bit of wind and waves as if it was about to collapse. The whole place was dead silent. Everyone stared at this scene in astonishment. The jaw of the beard guy and the others were about to touch the floor. Aisha's eyes were about to pop out looking at this scene in surprise. The members of the Twin Pirates who were watching the show were all stunned. After reacting, they stared at Rhodes one by one, terrified, nervous, and afraid. When Rhodes' cold stares locked them, these pirates were all startled. They felt a cold chill from the soles of their feet penetrating their brains the moment Rhodes stared at them, and then they instantly rushed to escape by jumping boats. Just with a little bit of effort, the pirates on the deck fled, and people could even hear the pirates on their ship shouting to set sail. However, Rhodes did not want to let them go. Rhodes stepped using Soru, stepped on the void using Jeppo, and even rose out into the sky as if there were invisible stepping stones in the air. He walked step by step and finally reached the top of the pirate ship. Under everyone's gaze, Rhodes drew his sword and proudly raised it into the sky. Dressed in white, while being blown by the sea breeze, it seemed as if a god had descended into this mortal world. Cut. Chapter 65. One strike. The sky was clear, and it was as vast as ever. But whether it was a pirate, Aisha, or the others, only that young man in white with a sword in hand was in their eyes. Holding the long sword, Rhodes waved it gently, and spit out the world in half. Cut. Nothing can describe the sharpness of his sword. It seemed that it could cut even heaven and the earth into two pieces. For countless people, they could only see magnificent and dazzling lightning striking the ship. This sword energy hit instantly, easily cutting through the deck of the pirate ship, and then directly splitting the cabin. The keel, which is tougher than steel, only lasted for a moment before being cut off. At the same time, the astonishing power of lightning spread out, sweeping in all directions. Trick, prick, prack. Facing the terrifying lightning energy, these ordinary pirates couldn't resist it at all. For a split second, the pirates who were still on the deck were electrocuted, their hair stood on end, and then fell to the ground one by one, twitching, foaming from their mouths, and dying. Squeak! An eerie cracking sound came. Then Aisha saw that the large pirate ship suddenly trembled slightly, and suddenly split into two, while the cut looked extremely neat. What? The pirate ship, which was broken in two, capsized in the sea, setting off an astonishing wind and waves, rippling away in all directions. My God, this is too much. The beard guy was stunned, while Mr. Nord barely managed to squeeze a few words. This guy is so strong. The dagger in Aisha's hand fell to the ground, but she was unfazed by it. Her eyes were locked on Rhodes with an astonished look on her face. Watching Rhodes defeating the two brothers truly surprised her. But watching Rhodes standing in the sky, cutting the boat with one strike, is a bit unacceptable. After all, Aisha and her father always did their business trips on her borders of the New World. Although they have heard of the destructive power of the top powerhouses, it is the first time that they have seen it with their own eyes. Duh! Rhodes floated back to the deck, glanced at the capsized pirate ship, and put his sword into the sheath. He was very calm as if he had done nothing. Well, in his point of view, this is true. Rhodes' current strength is levels above these brothers and the Silver Fox, who he had a lot of trouble defeating when he first debuted. There was silence on the deck for a while. Everyone looked at Rhodes back in awe as if they wanted to say something in admiration, cheers, etc., but no one dared to speak, not even whisper, as if they were afraid that Rhodes would also give them a word. Sure enough, no increase in the energy bar. Shrimps are shrimps, in the end, even if you chop a ship full of them, it will still be the same. Rhodes shook his head slightly and suddenly felt that the atmosphere was not quite right. He clearly won. Why is there no sound at all? He turned around slightly and looked at the group of people behind him. Seeing that they were all nervous, he couldn't help but smile. If you want the loot you better start before it sinks into the sea. He spoke softly and looked like a normal young man, which subconsciously relieved the bearded guy and the others. This. Beard guy was used to these situations, so he was the first to recover. He came back to his senses and seemed to want to say something, but he didn't know what to call Rhodes. Just call me Rhodes, and I would like to thank you for giving me a ride. Rhodes was unexpectedly very kind, so he quickly waved his hand and said, "It's really my pleasure." Rhodes was polite, but the beard guy did not dare to disrespect him, because the power that this young man just showed was too powerful. "Thank you very much for saving us. We will be responsible for salvaging all the property of the pirate ship. These are your trophies, and we will never touch the slightest bit of them." Seeing him act like this, Rhodes suddenly felt a little bored, and said lightly, "As you please." After saying that, Rhodes stood quietly as if thinking about something. Beard guy did not dare to disturb him, so he saluted again, stepped back a few meters, then slowly turned around and began to direct the sailors to salvage. The mercenary Nord was the most ashamed out of the bunch, so he took the lead and jumped onto the wreckage of the pirate ship, and was shocked by what he saw. At first, he thought that the pirates of the twin pirates were so powerful that they shouldn't die even if they lost their ship. So he rushed up with that in his mind, and just to make up for his faults so that the devilish young man would not be dissatisfied with him. But when he arrived, he found something entirely different from what he thought. He found the corpses of pirates, floating on the sea. They were all dead. He even found the mutilated bodies of the two twin brothers. That man, while cutting the large pirate ship with one sword, he destroyed all the pirates on it at the same time. This is too much. Nord was silent. He has been a mercenary for some years. It is not that he has never seen such a powerful existence as Rhodes. But being so strong and so young is a little scary. However, he didn't have any feelings of jealousy. After all, the gap between him and Rhodes was so great that he couldn't even produce emotions such as jealousy, only awe was in his heart. On the deck, Aisha stood not far away with a tangled face. She wanted to go up to chat with Rhodes like usual, but she had an unusual faint sense of alienation. Strength brings awe, and awe naturally leads to alienation. What's wrong with me? He won't bite if I ask him for contact information. Aisha hesitated for a long time. She murmured in a low voice, and a decidedly tragic look flashed in her eyes, like a soldier who was about to go to the battlefield. She was afraid that if she didn't go up now, she would never have the chance to talk with this man for the rest of her life. Rhodes' Kenbane Shokuhaki was as sharp as ever, and his perception was clear. He couldn't help but smile softly, sensing her state of mind. This was a little funny. He turned around, met Aisha's panicked eyes, and said in a mocking manner, "I didn't expect that Miss Aisha, who is not afraid of the sky, would fear me just like the others." Hearing this slightly teasing tone, Aisha froze for a while, and couldn't help but feel a little surprised. A few moments later she got inexplicably angry. "Who told you I was afraid of you? You're too arrogant." She snorted softly and said sourly. "Obviously, the age difference is not big, she is a bit older, but the difference in strength is so terrifying." Rhodes smiled slightly and said, "Forget about it, it's time now to do what we haven't done yet." What do you mean?" Aisha blushed. "He surely means that, right? This guy is too strong. What if he tries to force her? Should she accept it, acquiesce, or obey? Ah, isn't this a little erotic?" Rhodes gave her a strange look, and said, "Let's eat. It's dinner time now." After the thunder body tempering exercise, he was hungry. Aisha's face darkened. Chapter 66. Devil Fruit. The sailor guards are very professional, and they are very familiar with the salvage work. They quickly turned the pirate ship upside down and swiped it clean. When Beard Guy came to Rhodes with a list of belongings, he wasn't even sure that it would please Rhodes. "Your Excellency, these are all the goods salvaged from the pirate ship." The bearded man glanced at his daughter beside Rhodes in surprise, and then bowed his head respectfully, but sighed in his heart. "Silly girl, how could you think of winning the heart of such a hidden dragon-like figure?" Rhodes took the list and glanced at it. Suddenly his eyes widened slightly, and he said in surprise, "There is actually a devil fruit." "Yes, Your Excellency." Beard handed over a delicate box containing a red fruit that looked a bit like a coconut. "Is this the legendary devil fruit?" This was the first time that Rhodes actually touched or seen a devil fruit. The twin brothers didn't eat, is it because it's not worth it? Rhodes rubbed the fruit with great interest, but after looking at it for a while, he lost interest. He made relevant preparations when he was at the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army and read the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, but there was no record of this fruit in it. This is obviously an unknown devil fruit. However, judging from the shape and other details, it is very likely to be a paramecia devil fruit. If one person can eat one devil fruit, and if it's going to be an unknown fruit, the best choice must be the Logia type, followed by the Zoan type, and then the paramecia type. The Logia type devil fruit, no matter what kind of element it is, as long as you eat it, you can almost have the power to sail in the 4 seas and even cross the first half of the Grand Line. Even in the New World, the Logia type is an extremely rare and powerful ability, which can conquer many people. After all, the 3 current admirals of the Marines, all have powerful Logia type abilities. Next is the Zoan type. This is because the Zoan type will at least guarantee you a boost in power. Even the most common animal type can at least enhance the user's physical fitness such as strength, speed, and defense. If you are lucky enough to come across an ancient type, a legendary beast species, then you will make a lot of money. With painstaking practice, it should be no surprise to become a big name in the pirate world. And paramecia. This is very character-based. There are all kinds of abilities, strong and weak, weird and weirder. The uncertainty is too huge. The sentence "the strength of the fruit depends on the person" is quite correct, but normal people are not traversers, and their brains are limited by the world they are living in. The most typical example is probably Buggy the Clown, a terrifying character who can easily be the strongest pirate in the world. Buggy and Shanks are both trainee crew members of the Roger Pirates. Both of them were arrogant and dared to challenge the existence of Whitebeard head-on. Even if there is a gap in their qualifications, it is estimated that it will not be too big. But 20 years later, Shanks has reached the pinnacle of his life, became a Yonko, and ruled the New World, but Buggy is still fishing in the weakest sea and even became Luffy's first stepping stone as soon as he came out to the sea. From this, it can be seen that betting your life on an unknown devil fruit of the Logia or Zoan type can work, but betting on the paramecia type is simply a big gamble, and it can destroy your future. Recovering from his chaotic thoughts, Rhodes shook his head lightly. With swordsmanship and thunder, his strength system is already complete enough. He doesn't even look forward to the new talent that the system is hiding, at most it's just icing on the cake. What's more, the side effects of eating a devil fruit are too great, not only to be restrained by seawater, but also restrained by sea stone cuffs, and even by dark fruit. He has no interest in it at all. But even if he's not interested, that doesn't mean other people aren't interested. That's what Aisha is. She stared at this devil fruit with shining eyes, and her expression showed almost undisguised desire. For the people at the bottom of the pirate world, devil fruit is almost the only way to go up. She is different from her father, who has already planned to withdraw from the sea. She has her own dream, especially after Rhodes appeared, and her dream became firmer. And dreams without strength as a foundation are just empty talk. This look is too hot. Rhodes sensed it almost immediately, and he couldn't help but smile softly, saying, "I don't need this devil fruit. I'll sell it to you for 100 million belly." Beard Guy was stunned for a moment. 100 million belly for a devil fruit is a steal. Because although devil fruit can be priced, it has always been priceless. He pondered for a while and noticed Aisha's expression out of the corner of his eyes. Only then did he understand. He bowed respectfully and said, "Thank you very much for your generosity. Don't say these polite words, and give me the money quickly." Rhodes waved his hand indifferently. It's really useless for him to take this devil fruit, he won't eat it himself, and his friends don't need it, so he can only sell it in the end. In this case, instead of having to go to the auction house by yourself, it is better to be a favored person and sell it to Beard Guy. Aisha is a pretty good girl. The father froze slightly, and then he hurriedly went and came back with a card, and handed it to Rhodes. "Your Excellency, this is a universal bank card in the New World, with 200 million belly in it. In fact, the treasures on the ship of the twin pirates are not worth 100 million, about 60 to 70 million, but Beard Guy is obviously a very good person, so he just made it up for Rhodes." "A bank card?" Rhodes took it and glanced curiously. "Is this related to the world government?" "No, the Golden Emperor, an underground bank run by Guild Tesoro. The name of the world government is not easy to use in the New World, so only people like the Golden Emperor can afford to open a bank. This card is not registered, you can go to any island to exchange the money in it. Beard quickly explained. Golden Emperor. Rhodes pondered slightly, of course, he knew this guy. Guild Tesoro is a person with golden fruit ability. He developed his devil fruit to the level of awakening. In terms of strength, he is a character on the same level as Doflamingo. His status is, even more, bigger than Doflamingo. Guild Tesoro is the head of Grand Tesoro, the world's largest entertainment city, and controls many industries around the world. The most incredible thing is that he owns 20% of the world's belly. The impact of so much money is simply immeasurable, and it is even enough to manipulate the celestial dragons, use the power of the world government, and use the money to dominate the dark world. This is a super boss who really eats both black and white. No wonder so much money turned out to be inside a bank he opened. Rhodes muttered inside a little. Fortunately, this is a world where force is supreme. Although the power of money is powerful, it also has limitations. In the eyes of those who have really reached the top, Guild Tesoro is probably not too different from the Joker. There were no other accidents on the next itinerary. The merchant ship arrived at the destination smoothly and slowly entered the port. Goodbye, everyone. Rhodes lightly jumped to the port, waved at Aisha and the others, and walked into the city without looking back. Separation does always hurts. Aisha's eyes flickered with a faint strange color, holding the devil fruit in her tender little hands, her expression gradually became firmer. Have you really made up your mind? Beard asked. Aisha nodded lightly, I'm gonna leave the new world, and I will start from the first half of the Grand Line until I return one day to this place. After speaking, she did not hesitate to eat the devil's fruit. If not, how can I get closer to him? She muttered to herself, but her pretty face instantly turned bitter. It's so unpalatable, ugh. Chapter 67. Joining the rescue team. A dimly lit hall. Sabo and Koala are discussing with a group of revolutionary troops. The security on the Bright Slave Yard is very strict, and it is difficult for us to rescue Yuri and others intact. Even if it's not easy, we can't just leave them. Uncle Yuri and the others were caught in order to save us. I didn't say we leave them, it's just that the strength is not enough. Although the enemy leader can be handled by Sabo, we won't be able to stop the attacks of the others, and may even get caught too. Did you contact our base camp? Can they send someone to support us? They said it's a bit difficult. The new world is not our key penetration area. Everyone was talking and arguing. Sabo couldn't help but have some headaches. Rescuing is different from any other type of mission. It is necessary to ensure the safety of Yuri and others to the greatest extent possible. Koala was actually there, drinking black tea calmly. Since the last time she met Jun, she suddenly fell in love with black tea, and she felt that the gesture of sipping black tea was very elegant. Well, that guy Rhodes should be back soon. Taking a sip, Koala's thoughts diverged a little. Remembering what Rhodes told her half a month ago, he should be almost here. If he was here, this mission would be easy to solve. Koala and Sabo looked at each other, and the thought flashed through their minds almost simultaneously. Bam! Bam! At this moment, there was a soft knock on the door. Who is it? A revolutionary soldier frowned, showing a look of vigilance. There are a lot of secret posts outside. If there is a meeting, no one should disturb it. Sabo, however, showed a hint of a smile, came to the front in a blink of an eye, opened the door, and when he saw the familiar figure, he smiled and said, "Sure enough, it's you. Right outside the door is Rhodes, who just arrived. I haven't seen you for a long time." Rhodes also smiled, and while walking into the hall, he nodded slightly to Koala. Sabo closed the door, barely suppressed the joy on his face, introduced Rhodes to the agents present, and said, "Looks like we can do it now. With Rhodes here, there is no problem with attacking the auction house." As soon as these words came out, the revolutionary troops present were shocked and showed disbelief. The young man in front of him actually has the power to change the situation of the battle? That's impossible, this kid Rhodes is younger than Sabo. Everyone couldn't help but feel suspicious and looked at Rhodes secretly, but it was not easy to question, because Sabo's prestige was very high. As an agent trained by Dragon himself, and the future chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army, Sabo has established a good reputation in the entire Revolutionary Army at this time, and his popularity is very high. What's the situation? Rhodes blinked. A new mission as soon as he arrived? I don't have time to explain. Sabo smiled and said, let's talk about it on the way. Okay. This is a world where the strong are respected, and no conspiracy can compare to absolute force. Although Rhodes' strength at this time is not enough to rush through the world, he can easily deal with most situations. The action content is simple. Yuri, a cadre of the Revolutionary Army, and many soldiers of the Revolutionary Army were arrested and turned into slaves. Sabo and the others came to the rescue when they heard the news. However, the Bright Slave Yard is heavily guarded. Its leader once dominated the sea, nicknamed Poison Wolf, with a reward of 250 million. However, Sabo was confident about dealing with him. The strength of the other subordinates is also very good. There are several well-known mercenaries in the underground world who work for him, so the Revolutionary Army felt a bit of pressure preparing this plan. Moreover, they can't even rely on the people who were they going to rescue. Once you become a slave, you will lose strength. When you are rescued, you will be in a weak state, unable to directly become a combat force. At that point they will even need more protection. Some vicious slave owners will even plant terrifying chronic toxins. Which means fleeing is to die. Under such circumstances, preparing a plan was really hard. Bright Slave Yard. After listening to Koala's introduction, Rhodes couldn't help but smirk, and then said strangely. This guy called Poison Wolf is very interesting. That's not the point. Koala rolled his eyes at him and said. Stick to your part of the plan. How sure are you to block other enemies? Hearing this, the rest of the Revolutionary Army pricked up their ears. They were very curious about this mysterious young man's answer. If the enemy's strength is what you want me to deal with, then I'm gonna say. Rhodes thought for a while before giving a slightly conservative answer. I'm 100% sure. Hearing this answer, everyone in the Revolutionary Army fell silent, not knowing what to say. Even Koala couldn't help showing a hint of surprise. She knows him. Rhodes is not actually a person who likes to brag. His self-confidence comes from his strength, and he rarely does things he is not sure about. Could it be that you have really gotten stronger in the past 3 months? She couldn't help but look forward to it. Sabo's expression was very calm, and he couldn't help being a little surprised when he heard this. Protecting the hostages and repelling the intruding enemy at the same time is a much more difficult task than facing Poison Wolf alone. Because there are a lot of enemies and they are attacking from all directions, there will certainly be some people who are good at sniping with firearms. In this case, it is difficult to cover everything. Sabo himself is not very sure he can handle it. After all, he is a martial arts specialist, and no matter how fast he is, there is a limit. It is impossible to block all attacks, and it is impossible to kill all enemies at once. The team quickly arrived at the destination. This is a place similar to the Colosseum in ancient Rome. There was some kind of slave shops in the Colosseum, attracting audiences who are keen on blood. Outside the venue is a low and continuous building complex, where many slaves are imprisoned. Occasionally, some well-dressed nobles and merchants can be seen purchasing slaves inside. So what's the plan? Rhodes asked. Go in, find Yuri and the others, rescue them all, and force the steward to unseal them. Sabo said. Rhodes listened to this with a head full of black lines, and couldn't help but look at Koala, but found that the girl also had a look of approval. Well, I admit that this is indeed the easiest way. Rhodes covered his forehead weakly. The rescue operation went smoothly as expected. With the force of their group, it is still very easy to break into the Bright Slave Yard. After all, it is impossible for Poison Wolf and others to stay on guard forever. Under the persecution of a revolutionary army, the steward, who was in fear of death, did not dare to resist at all and quickly unsealed Yuri and others. Next is the most troublesome part. Sabo's expression gradually became serious. The Bright Slave Yard is a place with many eyeliners and surveillance den mushy. The news of their invasion probably spread long ago. Poison Wolf and the others will reach the battlefield in 30 seconds. Since it's all started by being reckless, let's be reckless to the end. Rhodes slowly drew out his sword and grinned. Before he could finish his words, a group of fierce figures with pistols and swords came quickly. The first few were the Poison Wolf and his subordinates. Chapter 68. Thunderstorm. Since Poison Wolf runs such a large slave yard, he naturally has a large number of subordinates, with more than 1,000 around him. Most of these people are recruited pirates, and a few are killers or mercenaries from the underground world, but no matter what their identity is, they are all battle-hardened elites with skilled techniques. Finding Rhodes and the others, his subordinates were all bloodthirsty and excited for killing, as if they were looking at moving money bags, their eyes were filled with lust and cruelty. Their aura gathered together was filled with evilness and murderous intent. In an instant, it seemed as if winter had come, and the people watching from afar all shivered subconsciously and backed away again and again. Attack! In such a situation, both sides don't need to talk nonsense. Poison Wolf and Sabo rushed out of their groups at almost the same time and then collided. Bang! Their fists collided, and Poison Wolf didn't seem to be falling to a disadvantage. His eyes narrowed slightly, a little dignified, but angrier. To run such illegal places, owners rely on their fierce reputation and prestige. If they were provoked to such an extent and unable to hit back, I am afraid that in the future, everyone will treat them as soft persimmons. Crackling! Sabo and the Poison Wolf are constantly clashing, and ordinary people could only see two shadows entangled in the field, their speed was too fast. These two are first-class physique masters. Every punch and every kick was hit with powerful force. Wherever they landed, the ground of the street was cracked. Colliding and clashing, again and again, the two ended up in a nearby street, clearing the field for the main battlefield. Don't just catch them all. That chick with short orange hair is mine. It's useless, what's so good about that woman? That handsome guy in white is so attractive. He's white and tender, and he looks quite arrogant. I know someone that likes this type the most. There was a burst of unbridled discussion from the opposite side, and it seemed that the victory was assured. The New World is different from other places. The average strength of an individual in this sea and the first half of the Grand Line is simply incomparable. A group of more than 1,000 people naturally possess extraordinary strength, even a major rear admiral of the Marines headquarters can easily be besieged and killed with the right number. However, Rhodes' strength is not comparable to the major rear admiral of the headquarters. Almost in the next instant, Rhodes moved. Boom! As soon as he stepped in, an invisible shockwave blew the dust away, the ground trembled violently, cracking like a spider web, and at the same time, the whole person rushed out like lightning. Whoosh! Everyone saw a flash of lightning, and in a second a figure instantly crossed a distance of more than 20 meters and then crashed into the enemy. The people on the opposite side didn't even have time to react. Bang bang bang! In an instant, the enemy array was pierced abruptly, and dozens of figures flew out, completely untenable. What the hell? The little bosses in the front row were all dumbfounded. It seemed like something slipped past them when they weren't paying attention. And this time, Rhodes has already rushed to the very core of the enemy group, every eye around him belonged to the enemy. Looking at the increasingly hideous expressions of the people around him, Rhodes smiled lightly. Have you ever seen a thunderstorm? Before he finished speaking, his whole body suddenly flashed in a bright blue light. The light became more and more blazing. Gradually, it was like a small sun descending into the world. The murderous intent in the eyes of the surrounding people was wiped out almost instantly, and panic has already appeared on their faces. Even though they couldn't use Kanbunshoku haki, instinct reacts to such danger, just like when a human sees thunder that pierces the sky. Quickly! He wanted to say run, but before he could finish his line, the terrifying blue electric arc jumped instantly. Stab, stab! The seemingly endless power of thunder surged out, turning into thunderous silver snakes, as thick as an arm, sweeping in all directions instantly. No matter how well trained these people were, in front of such strong surging lightning they won't have a chance at all. Roar! The shrill screams covered the sky and shook the world. Rhodes was very calm. Human traffickers, and slave owners, when these people decided to oppress slaves and buy and sell them, they have already been wiped out of their humanity, and they deserve to die. Letting one of them live is actually a waste of air. Unfortunately, it doesn't make much sense. Thinking of Jun-sensei's powerlessness towards such people, Rhodes couldn't help but sigh softly. The slave industry has always been prosperous in this world. Of course, there is the temptation of huge profits, but more, it is actually because the world aristocrats lead by example. If you want to put an end to this phenomenon, there is no point in destroying the slave yards. You should start from the root cause, overthrow the world government, and wipe the celestial dragons from existence. Boom! The scale of this lightning attack was too great. The terrifying light illuminated the sky. Most of the islands were clearly visible. Looking at it from a distance, people couldn't help showing awe. As for Koala and the others nearby, they were completely speechless. It's not only that the other side didn't have time to respond, in fact, even Koala and others haven't reacted yet. They just put on a fighting stance, preparing for a bloody battle, and then they saw a figure rushing out of their group, and then, the battle seemed to be over. Is this for real? A Revolutionary Army agent murmured in a low voice, hearing the roaring thunder in the distance. His body couldn't help but tremble when he said these words. He really got stronger. So much stronger. Koala's eyes were shining, looking at the figure standing proudly inside the lightning field. On the other side, the battle between the two was also affected by this attack. Logia-type thunder fruit. Looking at the roaring power of thunder in the distance, the poison wolf's expression became hideous, as if he had seen a ghost. A trace of awe gradually rose in his heart. Even Sabo was shocked and said with a wry smile. It seems that he really left a strong impression on Koala. I can't be left behind either. He muttered to himself, and his face, which had always been calm, couldn't help but show a dash of bloodthirst, feeling a sense of urgency. As the most talented young generation of the Revolutionary Army, he is also arrogant, he will not easily admit defeat. Besides, Rhodes is just that great when it comes to destructive power. It's not the first time he's seen his amazing attack power. He is confident that he won't lose to Rhodes. Let's start with you. Sabo got serious. The poison wolf was quickly pushed to the corner, and he started to get hurt and coughed up blood. He was horrified to find that the young man in front of him had better physical skills than him. Especially his unique claw technique that can easily break through his Bushoshoku haki, tear his skin and muscles and cause serious trauma. Chapter 69. Dragon's Breath. The dazzling thunder gradually ceased. What appeared in front of people's eyes was a pitch-black scorched earth and a mass of black unknown objects. The burning smell was so strong in the air. The residual high temperature distorted the air, making the white figure standing in the center of all of this a little blurry and mysterious. The thunderstorm has a wide range and is very destructive, but the thousands of people were not all crowded together, and the ones at the outer edge were lucky enough to escape. Seeing this terrifying scene, these people all took a deep breath, some of them felt fragile, and even fell to their knees with shocked looks, almost incontinent. Lightning is the power of heaven, it destroys everything, and that's what makes it the most awe-inspiring. The little bosses who were at the front of the team before and were not affected by this attack looked at each other and could see the deep fear and panic in each other's eyes. Step, step, step. The crisp footsteps emitted as if triggering something. These little bosses turned like birds in awe, exclaiming and wanting to flee, but it was too late. The figure in white flashed by in the field like a ghost. He drew his sword, sheathed it, and finished the job in one go. Rhodes didn't even look back at them and continued to walk forward. The 5 little bosses were shocked. A bloodstain appeared on the neck almost at the same time, and a trace of blood spurted out. They were terrified and subconsciously wanted to touch their necks, but just as their hands moved, their heads fell off. This scene left a strong impact on everyone in the Revolutionary Army, making them all gasp. The previous magnificent thunderstorm made them feel a heartfelt shock. But this scene when he killed these 5 in a flash made them feel a little bit of horror in their hearts and chills down their spines. Extreme speed, extreme sharpness, no one dared to think that he can stop his sword. It's only been less than a month since I was arrested, when did such a strong man appear in the Revolutionary Army? In the rear, Yuri, a cadre of the Revolutionary Army, was stunned. If being arrested is what it takes for such a man to appear, then so be it. If there are more young talents of this level, the dream of overthrowing the world government may be realized in a few years. After defeating 1,000 enemies, Rhodes calmly walked to the vicinity of Sabo's battlefield. He wanted to see how strong Sabo is now. In the original book, Sabo appeared in dress rosa in 1524. As soon as he appeared, he showed incredible physical skills, easily defeating many strong men including the captain of the first team of the Blackbeard Pirates and Vice Admiral Jesus Burgess, who is extremely powerful. It is now August 1521. His eldest brother, Fire Fist Ace, is already famous in the New World and joined the Whitebeard Pirates. It is estimated that he will soon become the captain of the 2nd Division. His younger brother, Monkey D. Luffy, will also set sail from the East China Sea next year, stirring up the situation. These three people can be regarded as beings with the fate of the protagonist, and their strength cannot be viewed from a conventional perspective. Bang bang bang! Perhaps aware of Rhodes's gazes, Sabo subconsciously stepped up his game, showing the special physical technique of Dragon Claw Fist to the fullest. There is a unique momentum in it. Suddenly, Sabo seized the opportunity and kicked the poison wolf into the air. Roar! With a light roar, his figure flashed and instantly appeared above the poison wolf. His hands flashed with dark and shiny black colors, and then he pressed it on the poison wolf's chest. Dragon's breath! There was a flash of sharpness in Sabo's eyes, and his fists brought a vague phantom that fell like a violent storm. After this extremely fast blow, Poison Wolf was forcibly hammered from midair to the ground. Bang! The earth cracked open instantly, and a huge amount of smoke and dust rose to the sky as if a big explosion had occurred. He has already developed this technique. Rhodes narrowed his eyes slightly, showing some surprise. This zero-distance attack method similar to Bruce Lee's one-inch punch was also used by Sabo in the original book. It smashed the ring of the Colosseum in one fell swoop. Its power was incredible, truly, like the breath of a dragon. When the smoke was cleared, Rhodes found that the famous poison wolf was dying, coughing up blood. It seems that Sabo's attack has destroyed his internal organs. What a really unique, physical arts! Poison Wolf's eyes widened as if he wanted to imprint Sabo's image in his mind, and then he turned his head slightly and looked at Rhodes not far away. He was suddenly surprised to find that the culprits of his death were nothing but two young men in their 20s. Oh, have I also become a stepping stone? When this thought crossed his mind, the look in the poison wolf's eyes gradually faded, his breathing slowly stopped, and he died completely. Phew! Seeing this scene, Sabo let out a long sigh of relief. He was relieved that he didn't fall too far behind Rhodes, and barely kept his composure. At this time, Koala also walked over with the group of Revolutionary Army agents. Let's go, it's not advisable to stay here for a long time. The two nodded lightly and walked forward first. When passing through the scorched black area, Sabo couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Dude, your destructive power is too exaggerated. It's only been 3 months, but you've become so much stronger. It looks like you'll be able to surpass me soon. He looked solemn, obviously not joking. I told you Rhodes has become a monster, maybe he can defeat you now. Koala mocked, what's more, he's 2 years younger than you. Sabo's face suddenly turned green, and he felt that his heart was pierced. In the past, when making comparisons, he always had the advantage of being young. Even if he was inferior to others, he could use his age as a cover. But compared with Rhodes, this advantage is completely lost, and it's even the other way around. Listening to the conversation between the two, everyone in the Revolutionary Army took a deep breath. The man who solely and instantly killed 1,000 people, was only 17 years old? At this age, what kind of food are they eating? Everyone fell into deep thought for a while. Let's get out of here first. Rhodes shook his head amusingly. He is growing fast, but Sabo is not slow, after all. He is the second brother of the protagonist. If there was a real fight, Rhodes claimed that the odds of winning should be slightly higher, but it was not necessarily so. After all, Sabo's physique skills are extremely high, and he has a strong fighting talent. The special force method of his original technique Dragon Claw Fist is still very threatening to Rhodes. Even if he can win, it should be a tragic victory, and it is even possible that they will end up dying together. However, these gaps will quickly widen after Rhodes starts to use the power of thunder to temper his internal organs. It shouldn't take too long. Rhodes could clearly feel the powerful beating of his heart. His internal organs were being strengthened little by little, and it would not be long before he reaches the safest limit. He just needs to wait a bit longer. Chapter 70. Home. At the end of the mission, Rhodes and the other two naturally didn't stay outside and returned to Baltigo by boat. After more than 10 days of sailing, the sailboat returned to the Baltigo without any further problems. Looking at the familiar white soil in the distance, all three let out a sigh of relief. After all, this is the new world. Strong people are everywhere, the sea is treacherous, and the weather is unpredictable. Even with the strength of the three, they are startling every step of the way, with constant twists and turns. At this time, when they saw their familiar island, they could finally feel relieved. Although Baltigo's landscape is not good, and it is a little desolate, for them, it is the safest place in the New World. The three of them landed on the shore, reported back to the Revolutionary Army at the coastal base, and then walked directly to the headquarters castle. It is always faster to go home than to leave. For most of the day, the quaint vicissitudes of the headquarters castle were already in sight. The three of them looked at each other and accelerated their speed tacitly, and soon came to the bottom of the castle. "You guys go to rest first, I'll hand in the task," Sabo said. Koala stretched his waist and said a little lazily, "Speaking of this, it seems that you will soon become a senior cotter." "I don't know about that." Sabo waved his hand and walked to the top floor of the castle. Rhodes and Koala also said goodbye to each other and went back to their respective homes. The headquarters castle is still quiet and empty, with quaint stone pillars standing root by root. Rhodes sighed with emotion. He still remembered that when he first became a reserve last year, he felt a little shock and a sense of insignificance in this place. But at this moment, looking at this place again, there is only a kind of indifference and calmness. Because this castle, no matter how splendid and magnificent it is built, he can destroy with one sword. Well, this desire to destroy is not good. Rhodes shook his head slightly, but his feet kept going, and he walked quickly to the outside of the familiar training hall. "Hey, Rhodes is back!" When someone saw Rhodes, they were slightly startled, revealing a strange look. Nia took a few steps, and quickly came to Rhodes and said, "Why did you take so long? Shinoa, Crow and the others came back several months ago." Speaking of which, she leaned over her and said with a sigh of relief, "You didn't fail in your mission, right?" "Fail?" Rhodes was slightly stunned and immediately reacted. "For normal cotter assessment tasks, the results will be available in at most a month. But because of his apprenticeship with Jun, it took him more than 4 months. Naturally, after such a long time, some people would start doubting. Some people even thought that Rhodes have died outside. After all, it is the New World, and this kind of thing had happened before." Figuring out the joints, Rhodes shook his head amusingly and said, "How could it fail? It was just delayed by some things." "This is good, this is good." Nia breathed a sigh of relief when she heard the words, and said with a smile, "I didn't believe it either. How could a monster like you fall in the cotter assessment? I heard that guy, Crow, has developed his Kanbunshoku and is waiting to challenge you. He is very confident. Many people are optimistic about him." When Crow lost to Rhodes, it was largely due to the suppression of Haki. After all, Crow's speed and strength in the half-beast transformation surpassed Rhodes. Rhodes shook his head lightly and did not speak, but Nia could feel absolute confidence from him, and a strange look flashed in her eyes. The two walked casually and chatted. Speaking of which, Nia at this time has also become an official agent in the Revolutionary Army, but it has not been assigned yet. At this moment, Rhodes was startled when he saw 2 familiar figures approaching. One is Crow, and the other is the one-armed swordsman who triggered his talent for swordsmanship when he first came to this world. That's Crow's teacher, the swordsman Ryaji, who is very powerful and a high-ranked cotter. Nia followed her gaze and introduced Rhodes in a low voice. "Ryaji." Rhodes blinked, and suddenly remembered the legendary dragon killer, Ryoma, because Ryaji's attire was very much like a traditional samurai of Wano. I don't know if there is any relationship between the two. Even if he is not a descendant of the great swordsman Ryoma, it is estimated that he's from Wano. Wano is a mysterious island in the New World. There are many brilliant swordsmanship schools proliferating in it. The most famous of them is the legendary swordsman Ryoma who killed a dragon. At this time, Crow also noticed Rhodes, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he walked over. He was ready to challenge him, but then Ryaji suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Come back, you are not his opponent." Crow's expression froze when he heard the words, his face was blue and white. But Crow was very aware of how powerful his teacher was and how sharp his vision is. He didn't dare to disobey at all and retreated obediently. It's just that there is still a strong sense of unwillingness and suspicion in his eyes. In order to defeat Rhodes, it can be said that he racked his brains and worked hard, and finally developed his haki. Just when he was about to defeat Rhodes and regain his glory, he was denied by the most respected man in his life. Even if he trusts his teacher, he can't help but raise a little doubt. Could it be that his teacher is wrong? A few months ago, he was still in an inextricable battle with Rhodes. If it weren't for his lack of control over haki, he would have definitely won. At this time, Ryaji stared at Rhodes with deep eyes, as if he had noticed something, and said with great interest. If there's a chance, hope we can learn from each other. Yes. Rhodes was surprised by this man's sharpness, but he didn't feel any fear and responded calmly. This. Hearing this, both Crow and Nia took a deep breath, showing disbelief. Ryaji is a senior cadre of the Revolutionary Army. He was a top swordsman at his peak. Even if he lost one of his arms, his strength is still terrifying, and he is definitely stronger than a rear admiral. I'm glad to see that we have a strong man like you with us. Ryaji seems to be a serious man, even if he is complimenting, his expression is still very solemn, and he looks rather old-fashioned. He took a deep look at Rhodes, then took Crow around and left. He's a very strong swordsman. Rhodes narrowed his eyes and said. Of course. Ryaji-san suddenly appeared in the New World, making a name for himself, and became popular for a while. Later, he was recruited by the leader and became a senior cadre. Many people were unconvinced at that time, but Ryaji defeated more than 10 senior cadres in a row with one sword, and this established his reputation in one fell swoop. Nia finished speaking, and then showed a strange look. Such a man, that is pretty famous in the world of swordsmanship, why would he ask you to learn from each other? Could it be that he wants to take you as a disciple? That's right, you are the most talented swordsman in our Revolutionary Army, maybe he wants to accept you as a disciple. Hurry up and apprentice, Rhodes, this is a real swordsman expert, and he is only steps away from being a great swordsman. She was excited and kept talking as if she wanted to be a disciple. He doesn't have the qualifications to be my teacher. Rhodes shook his head lightly. An injured top swordsman, his strength is at best 6 or 4. If they really fight to the death. With the power of thunder, Rhodes has a great chance of winning. In this case, if Rhodes asks him, Ryaji would probably be embarrassed to accept. Hearing this, Nia's excitement froze on her face, and she was a little overwhelmed. After not seeing each other for a few months, has Rhodes reached the point where even senior cadres can't reach him? Looking at Rhodes' very calm and handsome face, Nia couldn't doubt it. If this man said it, he would definitely be able to do it. Of course, Rhodes is confident, because tonight, he will begin the first tempering of the internal organs. According to previous experience, the effect of the first tempering session is often the most significant. Chapter 71. Core Refining. At the same time, on the top floor of the Revolutionary Army headquarters, a slightly gloomy conference room. Sabo was reporting back the mission to Dragon. Starting from Rhodes' assessment of killing Silver Fox, encountering Vice Admiral Jun in Kronos Island, the latter accepting Rhodes as her disciple, the separation of the three, then the reunification and the last rescue operation. Sabo explained everything in detail. No lies and no emotions were involved in his speech. Because he knows very well that in front of Dragon, any lying or personal preference is meaningless. He was the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and he didn't build up this great power out of nothing. If he doesn't even have the ability to distinguish between real and fake news, he might have been infiltrated and dealt with by the world government long ago. That's how things went. After finishing speaking, Sabo stood there respectfully. His expression seemed to be calm, but he secretly looked at Dragon's face from the corner of his eyes. Obviously, there was no superficial peace in his heart. Similar to Luffy and Ace, Sabo is also the kind of existence who is willing to be your friend once he recognizes you. Although he didn't get along with Rhodes for a long time, he had already recognized him as a friend of the same age in the Revolutionary Army. They are competitors and combat partners. Do you have a good impression of Rhodes? Dragon's tone was very calm, and his expression was very indifferent. Sabo was completely unable to figure out what this mysterious teacher was thinking. He pondered for a while, then cautiously opened his mouth and said, Rhodes is a trustworthy person, and his dislike of the world's nobles and dark systems which is shown in the general direction is also very sincere. Not only me, but Koala also thinks it's impossible for him to be led astray by his marine teacher. As he spoke, Sabo couldn't help becoming nervous. Even in their previous discussion, both he and Koala felt that Dragon wouldn't pursue the matter, but they always had a bit of concern about this matter. The so-called concern can turn into chaos. In an environment like the Revolutionary Army, Sabo hardly had many friends of the same age. Rhodes' behavior and character could be called the one that suits his taste the most. The scene fell into silence for a while, and the atmosphere was oppressive and suffocating. After a while, Dragon suddenly said, "Your mentality is in a mess, this way you won't be take the responsibility for the future of the Revolutionary Army." "I'm not suspicious of Rhodes, I was just testing you." Sabo finally breathed a sigh of relief when he heard these words, and scratched his head in embarrassment. He knew that he has just lost a few points, but he didn't regret it. If can't feel stressed when his friend is in a trouble, then he's just a scam. Perp. At this time, the phone rang, and Dragon raised his hand to answer it. A voice sounded from the other end, which seemed to be Morley, the commander of the Western Army. "Boss, the person in charge of the Kano country just died in battle. The Qadr Siyu is dead? What's the situation?" During a meeting to discuss the division of forces, he died at the hands of the godfather of the West Sea, Capone Beg. The Hapo Navy also participated. "I see. I will immediately send someone to take over the revolutionary affairs at the Kano country." After finishing speaking, Dragon hung up the phone and pondered. Neither the Hapo Navy nor Beg is easy to provoke. Ordinary Qadrs and even senior Qadrs may not be able to deal with them. Who should I send? Dragon was thinking and suddenly raised his head to look at Sabo. After several years of training, Sabo is obviously good enough in terms of strength and ability. Wait. There seems to be another one. In that case, let's compare the two. It happens that Ryaji is also at the headquarters. He thought for a while, and a perfect plan appeared in his mind. In the middle of the night, everything was silent. Rhodes sat cross-legged on the bed and entered deep meditation. Kanbunshoku is different from the spiritual sense of cultivation. It is an ability to sense the breath of creatures and the emotional changes in one's heart, and it cannot be used for internal vision. But Rhodes is a little different. The addition of perception attributes from the system caused a subtle change in Rhodes' Kanbunshoku. He could vaguely see the movements in his body, just like when he awakened his Busashoku Haki. However, compared to before, what Rhodes can see is much clearer, and he can even tell which is which. At this moment, in Rhodes' induction, the muscles and bones are the most powerful and vibrant, while the internal organs are a little bleak, which means that they are overwhelmed. At this moment, one after another small and weak thunderbolts flashed out, followed the blood, and spread in all directions. What is different from before is that in the past, these thunderbolts would only pass through the muscles and bones. But this time, at will, it slowly approached the internal organs. The stimulation of the electric current caused obvious changes in the sensitive and fragile viscera, and they began to squirm slightly as if they were twitching. Chest tightness, shortness of breath, dizziness, and a series of various symptoms appeared. Rhodes almost spit out a mouthful of blood, and his skin turned red as if he was about to ooze blood. At this time, the heart was stimulated and the blood flow accelerated. Such a terrifying performance made Rhodes shudder violently. Fortunately, he didn't try to temper his viscera recklessly back then. Calm down. Out of pure determination, Rhodes managed to stabilize his mind and continued to test slowly. Gradually. With his rich experience, he quickly found a certain balance point, and the electric current began to stimulate the viscera regularly. There wasn't much discomfort, just like the first time he tempered his muscles and bones. The foolproof preparations are finally ushering in the harvest. Rhodes did not encounter too many accidents and started refining his internal organs without any danger. Successful. The thought flashed through his mind, and Rhodes gathered all his thoughts and devoted himself to strengthening the viscera. This kind of strengthening that is almost visible to the naked eye has not been experienced for a long time, so he couldn't help but feel how he missed it. He felt every minute and every second passing. In Rhodes' perception, the aura of his internal organs is rapidly increasing. The entire sensed picture, the imbalance caused by the obvious gap between strength and weakness before, has been gradually made up, and it looks much more comfortable. The next day, early morning, Rhodes opened his eyes, and a look of joy flashed across his face. The first session of the viscera refining was successful. He slowly got up and got out of bed, and walked a few steps. Maybe it's his imagination, but after the internal organs were strengthened he feels as if his soul was transferred into a new body. No matter how he moves his hands or feet, his whole body is wriggling in response. This feeling is extremely wonderful, as if the body is completely new, even the air seems to be fresh, his breathing became extremely smooth, and there is a feeling of being able to use his body freely and vividly. The most obvious change should be the increase in physical strength. After a little experimentation, Rhodes came to this conclusion. In the past, his physical strength was far inferior to that of real veterans. If he was dragged into a protracted battle, he would easily suffer. But now that his core has been strengthened, this shortcoming has been made up for. When the internal organs are strengthened to a certain limit, he will have that amazing stamina the strong men of the pirate world have. 3 days and 3 nights, or even 10 days and 10 nights of fighting wouldn't be a problem anymore. Chapter 72. The results. A few days later, the practice room. This is the highest standard training room in the headquarters castle. It is made of a special material that is only slightly weaker than sea stone, and it is about tens of square meters in size. The various equipment here is top-notch. They can measure the strength and speed in detail, and roughly evaluate the strength of the person. But that's only applied at the cotter's level. If it goes higher, the equipment will simply get destroyed. Koala used to practice here. Rhodes stood in front of the punch strength testing machine, pondered for a while, and then concentrated a bit of strength before he punched out suddenly. Boom! The testing machine vibrated violently, and then a dazzling red light kept flashing. It looks like it had been ruined. There was a mark several inches deep where his fist hit, and the lines were clearly visible. Well, this isn't working. Rhodes touched his chin, secretly trying to evaluate his own strength. The strengthening of one's core cannot directly enhance physical strength and agility, but it can play a role similar to integration and coordination. Prior to this, due to the fragility of his viscera, Rhodes couldn't fully exert his body strength. Because once he tries to channel all of his strength, he will end up hurting his internal organs. But at this moment, with the improvement of the strength of the viscera, this restriction has gradually disappeared, and the power that Rhodes can exert has increased by a full 20%. What a terrifying increase this is! With Rhodes' strength at this time, even if it is only 20%, it is enough to defeat ordinary pirates with over 100 million, and ordinary Revolutionary Army cotters may not be able to stand in front of him. This level of strength should have surpassed the original Lao Ji. I don't know how much difference there is between this level and a Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters. A trace of thought flashed in Rhodes' mind. However, even if there is still a gap in strength, with the power of thunder and swordsmanship, my destructive power is completely comparable to that of ordinary Vice Admiral in the headquarters, or even higher. There is also a big gap between each Vice Admiral. Ordinary people would be easily beheaded by an existence of Doflamingo's level, but the top Vice Admirals of the headquarters can contend in a short period of time without losing the wind. All in all, after refining the viscera, Rhodes' physical strength has been greatly improved, his breathing has been light and deep, his basic qualities have also been strengthened, and his overall strength has risen by a level. If he faces Lao Ji and Harmon again, the battle should end faster. At this time, footsteps suddenly sounded from outside the door, and then Koala opened the door and entered. As soon as she came in, her eyes were fixed on the fist test machine in front of Rhodes. Seeing the clear fist mark on it, she was a little surprised and said, "You're practicing your physical skills. If it's a sword swing, this destructive power is of course nothing to be surprised by, but if it's a fist, it's a bit surprising." "No, I just got a little bit stronger after practicing a little bit," Rhodes said. A few black lines could not help but appear on Koala's forehead. "What do you mean you got stronger after a bit of practice? No one can get this strong after a bit of practice." From Koala's point of view, someone who's proficient in fishman karate, the power of this punch completely surpassed her by a notch. Koala sighed, "Let's not talk about this ever again. The leader asked me to call you over. It seems that there is an important task. Let's hurry over." "Okay, I'll take a shower first, my whole body smells like sweat," Rhodes said. "Go, go, go." Koala was a little impatient and her tone was very aggressive. While waiting, Kurla came to the punch test machine with a blank face, mustered all her strength, and punched out. Then Koala unexpectedly discovered that her punch couldn't even leave marks on the punch testing machine. Koala's beautiful eyebrows twitched slightly, she took a deep breath before suppressing the urge to dissect this freak, Rhodes. Of course, if she does that, it's very likely that Rhodes will overturn it. Rhodes took a shower very quickly, and after a while, he got dressed and walked out of the bathroom, and said to Koala, "Let's go." Kurla didn't say a word and led the way angrily. On her pretty face, the 4 characters "very upset" were written brightly. Rhodes didn't bother to talk to her. How can he be blamed for increasing his strength so quickly? In silence, the two kept moving forward. Rhodes was surprised to find that Koala was leading him outside the headquarters castle. Could it be that you got so angry that you decided to find a place to fight with me? Sensing the increasingly weird eyes behind her, Koala finally lost her composure and snorted coldly. It's a battle. You are too strong. In order to prevent the castle from being destroyed, the battle location was set outside. As soon as she finished speaking, Rhodes saw many figures standing in the distance, including Monkey D. Dragon, Murloc Hack, and many other high-ranking members of the Revolutionary Army, as well as Crow and other new members of the Revolutionary Army. Farther away, Sabo was confronting Ryoji in an open space. It seems that this task is very challenging, that Ryoji is actually in charge of the strength appraisal. Rhodes was thinking, but he didn't stop on his feet. He came to Dragon and bowed. His expression was very calm, and he looked at Dragon indifferently. Perhaps the normal Revolutionary Army, even Sabo and Kurla, would feel nervous and at a loss in front of Dragon. But it's impossible for Rhodes to be afraid. In the eyes of Rhodes, who is a time traveler, whether it is the Yonko dragon or the existence of the Gorosei, they are just towering mountains waiting for him to step over. There is respect, but no fear. Dragon stared fixedly at Rhodes, staring at the latter's pitch-black eyes that were as flat as a mirror lake, and then suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, and said in a low and restrained voice, "These eyes really deserve to belong to the strongest existence the reserve force has ever witnessed in the past 20 years. Thank you." Rhodes was neither arrogant nor impetuous and made a steady deal. "Very good." Dragon turned around with a smile, and said to Sabo in the field, "You two can start now. Don't be shy about going all out. I will be responsible for your safety." With Dragon's strength, it is completely enough to control the situation of the battle, and there will be no accidents. Sabo and Ryoji nodded. "Thanks for having me." As a junior, Sabo naturally saluted first, and then took a fighting posture. "You go first." Holding the hilt of the sword, Ryoji said softly to Sabo, with a condescending look on his face. Seeing this, Sabo's expression remained unchanged. His hands became claws, and he kept moving around Ryoji, like a cheetah about to attack, looking for an opening. Ryoji's expression was always calm. Even when his back was facing Sabo, there was not the slightest fluctuation. The whole person just stood there quietly, with one hand lightly resting on the hilt of the sword. Rhodes narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at it for a while, and suddenly said in a low voice, "Sabo can't win." Koala turned her head in surprise and said somewhat dissatisfied, "Sabo is very strong, and he will definitely become a senior cadre soon. Ryoji is strong too, but he's also injured. In my opinion, the outcome is hard to tell." She snorted softly, not sure if she was still angry. Chapter 73. Flawless. The little girl was quite confident. Rhodes smirked, and then said, "Oh? Do you wanna bet?" "Bet? Bet on what?" 100 million bellas. 100 million bellas? Since when do you have 100 million bellas? Koala was taken aback. 100 million bellas is not a small number. If Rhodes didn't sell that devil fruit, his fortune is estimated to be only 6 figures by now. Why do you care? You just have to know that earned it fair and square, I didn't steal or rob. So do you wanna bet or not, final word. Rhodes squinted at her as if looking at a poor soul, full of superiority. Koala was so angry, she gritted her teeth and wanted to agree. But suddenly she thought of something, her expression froze suddenly, and then he whispered angrily. I don't have enough money. You're so poor, how much do you have? Koala thought for a while before opening her mouth and saying. About 84.3 million. After saying these words, Koala suddenly realized the seriousness of the matter. She was actually betting on family property, and it was a gamble that ruined her entire family. Koala instantly became vigilant, staring at Rhodes suspiciously. Rhodes looked calm and frank as if there was nothing wrong, but Koala was such a clever person, she knew very well that nothing wrong was the biggest problem. You are deceiving me. Her delicate little face suddenly bulged into a bun, and just as she was about to continue to say something, the sudden battle in the field caught her attention. Only a clang sound was heard. When Sabo's claws collided with Ryoji's sword, there was a deafening sound of gold and iron, and an invisible wave of air burst out. There was a momentary stalemate. Then everyone saw that Sabo was thrown out abruptly, with traces of bright red blood oozing from his fist. While Ryoji just shook his body slightly. With one blow and collision, the verdict will be determined. Sabo was not discouraged after losing the first clash. For a strong man of his level, this injury is nothing at all. Whoosh! In the next moment, he rushed out and with a flicker, he came close to Ryoji looking for an inside fight. Crack! The two collided dozens of times in an instant. In the eyes of Crow and others, they could only see two fuzzy black shadows entangled together. Occasionally, shock waves spread out, tearing the earth with black cracks. The earth trembled, the wind howled, and dust filled the sky. But anyone with a discerning eye could see that the black shadow holding the sword was firmly suppressing the bare-handed black shadow. This is the true power of a teacher. Crow's expression was filled with pride. Nia and others were also amazed. Is this the strength of senior cadres? As expected, Brother Sabo is still too young. Ryoji's age is at least twice that of Sabo's. It's normal to lose. Koala explained to Rhodes, and at the same time secretly rejoiced that she didn't agree to bet against each other just now, otherwise she would have returned to where she was before liberation. Oh! Rhodes was non-committal. Another fierce collision. Sabo's whole body was thrown out, his clothes were torn, his hair was messy, and his forehead was covered with sweat. His eyes were extremely serious, but there was a trace of powerlessness and unwillingness. Ryoji is too strong, he couldn't find a single weakness. He is behind Ryoji in almost all aspects, and his attack power and combat experience were crushed by the latter. If he is not very talented in physical skills, he wouldn't even be able to handle himself in front of Ryoji up until now. During the battle, even if he tried his best, it was still difficult to avoid his sharp blade, and he was hit again and again. Facts have proven that. Even with one arm, Ryoji is still levels above him. Sabo still has a long way to go. Dragon shook his head slightly in his heart, and said in a deep voice, "The battle is over, Sabo you're out, Rhodes you can go." Yes. Sabo quickly collected his mood, and when he passed by Rhodes, he reminded in a low voice. "Be careful, his technique is perfect, almost flawless." Noted. Rhodes nodded casually. Indeed, any Vice Admiral level character in the headquarters has almost honed his various abilities to the extreme, and there are almost no shortcomings, especially this kind of character who is proficient in physical skills or swordsmanship. Is it Rhodes' turn? Hack the Murloc, Giltio and other high-ranking members of the Revolutionary Army were looking forward to it, but they didn't have too much expectation. Sabo is recognized as the #1 genius of the Revolutionary Army. He learned from the leader Dragon, and his strength has been respected by the younger generation for a long time. Yet even he can't deal with Ryoji. Rhodes has just been promoted less than a year ago, so what can he do? I really don't know why the leader asked Rhodes to go up. He is at most slightly stronger than me, how could he beat my master? Crow was very upset. Shinoa and other cadres are mostly like this. Perhaps in the entire field, only Nia and Koala have more confidence in Rhodes. Koala's confidence was coming from what she saw today on the punch test machine, while Nia simply thinks that this man will not lose. Everyone's eyes fell on Rhodes. But he didn't notice it. He put one hand lightly on the hilt of the sword, looked calmly at Ryoji in front of him, and said, "You fought just now, do you want to take a break?" "No, it was just a warm-up," Ryoji said lightly, and a fiery look suddenly flashed in his eyes. Since Rhodes was called up too, he knew that his intuitive guess about him was probably correct. This is a very powerful young swordsman. If he wants to win, he has to do his best. "Pleased to be facing you," Ryoji said and then drew his sword. One shot, instant slash. This is a special sword drawing technique. Bang! The speed at which Ryoji drew his sword was almost as fast as lightning. The moment he drew the sword, a terrifying force was formed. Buzz! A dark green arc of light suddenly appeared. Following Ryoji's sword slash, this arc of light suddenly formed a bright sword energy, which was shot out instantly. It looked as if it could cut everything, it was unstoppable. Ryoji is definitely the strongest existence that Rhodes has encountered so far. Facing the incomparably powerful swordsman Ryoji, who is probably a samurai from Wano, Rhodes was ready to fight with an extremely strong fighting spirit, full of vigor. One sword style lightning. Thanks to his enhanced new body, Rhodes exerted his strength to the extreme, stronger than any time before. A bright silver-white sword energy was shot out, like a crescent moon, bursting out from his blade. Boom! The two sword chi collided in the air and suddenly exploded, causing two deep sword marks to appear on the ground. Ryoji used to be a top swordsman. Although he lost an arm at this time and his strength became weaker, his understanding of swordsmanship did not decrease. After it forcibly defeated Rhodes' silver-white sword aura, the dark green sword aura was weakened a bit, and then continued to rush out, knocking Rhodes back 2 steps before finally dissipating. It really is strong. The initial collision was slightly weaker, but Rhodes' fighting spirit was now even higher, his lazy attitude completely disappeared, and what was displayed before everyone was a serious state they had never seen before. It was time to get serious. Chapter 74. Invulnerable? Unbelievable. Seeing Rhodes' unscathed appearance under Ryoji's attack, Crow's eyes almost popped out, he simply couldn't believe it. A few months ago, this guy Rhodes was only slightly better than him, and he only lost because he couldn't use Haki. He has worked so hard during these last few months to learn Haki, just to find that his rival is already able to stand up to his teacher. This is simply unscientific. The others who graduated at the same time as Rhodes were also dumbfounded and their jaws were on the floor. Not to mention them, even Hak, the fishman who can be considered one of Rhodes' teachers, was shocked. Initially, he was proud enough to know that his strength is just slightly worse than Ryoji's. And Rhodes was able to receive Ryoji's attack head-on. Doesn't this mean that this guy's strength is almost ready to compete with him? Hak felt that 10,000 beasts were galloping past in his heart. With Rhodes' talent and strength that he already knew about, he actually envisioned the day when he would be surpassed by this guy, but he never imagined that this day would come so quickly. To achieve this level without the power of thunder, Ryoji really has no hope of defeating this guy. Koala clenched her fists, inexplicably looking forward to it. And in the field at this time. Sting, sting, sting. Rhodes was using the power of thunder now, and at the same time, as he swung his sword, violent thunder swept across, turning into a pillar of thunder that rushed towards Ryoji. The air was filled with electric arcs, making one's hairs stand on end. Is this the rumored thunder sword intent? It's really outrageously strong. There was a little exclamation in Ryoji's eyes, but his expression was still calm, and he slashed out, sending a sword chi out without even thinking about dodging or evading. Crack! The sword energy swept forward as if it was going to split everything, almost instantly splitting the thunder pillars that were targeting him. At the same time, Ryoji stumped the ground with his foot, setting off a gust of wind, and then as fast as lightning, he rushed towards Rhodes. But if this is all that you can do, then you lose. Ryoji's eyes returned to indifference. A top swordsman would naturally have such arrogance. He was already a little uncomfortable when he was entangled by Sabo before. Fighting Rhodes again at this time, even though he was truly amazed by Rhodes' talent and strength, he didn't want to hold back anymore. No one would like to be a stepping stone. Moreover, this kind of exaggerated natural type thunder power and strong current will definitely affect him in a long battle, so a quick decision must be made. Ryoji's slash is too strong, even Rhodes' thunder sword intent is useless. A senior coder is a senior coder, in the end, they are not so easy to overthrow. Everyone watching the battle showed sympathy. Rhodes' performance was amazing enough, but it was still a bit worse. Everyone believed that if Rhodes were to sharpen his swordsmanship and Haki in the next few years, he might be able to defeat Ryoji, but right now, it's still too early. Sabo also shook his head slightly, not optimistic about Rhodes' chances. Only Dragon was as immovable as a mountain, and his eyes were always indifferent. He asked Ryoji to be in charge of appraising the junior's strength. He never actually thought that Sabo and Rhodes could win. The specific reason behind this is so he can decide who to choose, that of course depends on which of the two will perform better. Moreover, they needed some good beating. It is never a great thing for a talented man to have it easy all the time, occasional failures are more conducive to growth. At this time, Ryoji burst out with an astonishing speed, like lightning across the sky, and rushed to the front instantly. In his head, he saw the end of this challenge with 2 slashes to the body. The middle-level characters in this department are indeed much stronger than Laoji and the others. No wonder even Sabo has no power to fight back. Rhodes secretly sighed. Before refining the viscera, he was able to beat Laoji and Harmon violently by himself, because although these two were experts in physical arts, they were suppressed by him in terms of speed. They didn't have any AoE abilities, so they couldn't deal with Rhodes at all. But Ryoji is different. Ryoji himself is a top swordsman. In terms of pure swordsmanship, he is a step above Rhodes. Besides, whether it is strength or haki, he is far superior to the other two, and even the speed that Rhodes is best at is only one level behind him. He is simply one step less than him in all aspects. Unfortunately for you, you came a few days late. If I confronted you before refining my internal organs, I'm afraid that even if I fight with all of my power I would only be able to put up a good show. But now, facing Ryoji who came so close and slashed down with his sword, Rhodes' eyes flickered with thunder. The benefits of the initial Viscera training did not only make his physique and strength skyrocket, which is reflected in the Book of Knowledge, but also accumulated more than 900 energy, advancing towards the full value, which is 947. The color of the power of this level of thunder is extremely deep, and the violent power is enough to instantly turn an ordinary person into charcoal. The previous sword chi he used was just a small trial. Holding the sword in both hands, the blue light in his eyes soared, and suddenly he swung his sword. One sword-style Thunder Dragon. The nearly perfect power of thunder was driven to the extreme, and the sudden burst of power changed the color of the world. The only thing that everyone could see is the dark blue thunder. Buzz! The air was humming and rippling. Before the sword could be swung down, the mighty and irresistible power of thunder caused Ryoji's expression to change suddenly. How is this possible? Ryoji was shocked. The thunder he used before was already amazing enough, but Rhodes could even make it stronger. Because the distance is too close, and he was already in motion to strike Rhodes down, it was impossible for Ryoji to just step back, so he could only swing his sword to meet him and hope for the best. Almost at the next instant, a thunder dragon that was highly condensed by lightning and glowing with pale silver light rushed out violently and slammed into Ryoji's sword. Even though Ryoji used all his strength to push his Busashoku haki to the extreme, and his whole body exuded an aura of cutting everything, he was still forcibly defeated by Thunder Dragon. Boom! The ground split open, and a terrifying deep gully appeared, and Ryoji was forced back by the Thunder Dragon for more than a dozen meters. Every time he was forced back, the ground split in front of him. By the time the Thunder Dragon dispersed, Ryoji was 100 meters away, and in front of him is a shattered land. Poof! A great amount of scorching blood with electric arcs rushed out of his mouth. Looking at the young man with the sword bathed in the terrifying thunderlight in the distance, he couldn't help but show a hint of unbelievable shock. With one strike of that electrified sword, the situation was reversed. The audience was silent. There is only one thought in everyone's mind. Is this real? Can the Thunder Sword intent actually do this? Even Dragon, who had always maintained aloof and deep manners, almost dropped his jaw and was extremely moved. Even if he is in charge of the Revolutionary Army, he is well versed in ancient and modern times, he knows astronomy from the top and geography from the bottom. He has never seen or heard of such a monster who can play with thunder depending only on his sword intent like this. The Logia Thunderbolt fruit is nothing more than that, right? Koala was even more stunned. She had seen Rhodes' thunderstorm some time ago, and she was shocked at that time, but after all, it has only been a few days. This thunder dragon that tore through the ground is nothing in comparison. It abruptly changed the situation of the battle and repelled the senior cadre Ryoji. Hey! Isn't this too much? Chapter 75. Victory. Rhodes has been exploring various combinations of the power of thunder and swordsmanship. Thunder Dragon is one of those combinations, in fact, the strongest move that he could come up with, which blasted the mighty Ryoji into the air with a single strike, shocking the audience. This guy Rhodes is actually so strong. Sabo smiled wryly, his eyes full of shock. The premonition really came true, but he didn't expect it to be so fast. Even with Sabo's calmness, it was a bit hard to accept. It's not that he can't accept being surpassed. With Rhodes' demonstrated talent and potential, surpassing him is almost a certainty. Even if it feels a little uncomfortable, Sabo still agrees. But he never expected that this day would come so soon. As for Crow, Shinoa, and others who graduated at the same time as Rhodes, they have completely lost their words at this time, and they are all in a daze, their minds are blank, and they're just in disbelief. This. It seems that even the heavens cannot stop Rhodes at this time. In the field, Ryoji took Rhodes' blow of Thunder Dragon head on, which made the hand holding the sword tremble. This level of swordsmanship. Ryaji's eyes were serious. If he was at his peak, he might still be able to catch up to him, but at this moment, he was a little bit powerless. Whoosh! The next moment, Rhodes moved violently. Between lightning and flint, his whole body spanned a distance of nearly 100 meters in an instant, bringing out a stream of light. The speed he showed at that moment didn't look any slower than Ryaji's. Ryaji didn't dare to be careless and even raised his sword to greet him. Bang! When the blades collided, huge sparks were blown out, and the sound of metal and iron clanging swept out like sound waves. His strength is inferior to mine. As soon as it collided, this thought flashed in Ryaji's mind, but immediately after, there was a violent thunder roaring, and lightning piercing the air like silver snakes. Seeing this, Ryaji's face suddenly changed colors, he stepped back without hesitation, and at the same time swinging his sword, splitting the thunder. But even so, through the conduction of the metal sword blade, the strong current still affected his body, and he trembled uncontrollably. Although this range is very weak, in a battle of this level, any mistake may lead to losing the advantage. The thunder in Rhodes' eyes skyrocketed, and he carried himself forward without hesitation, swiping his sword and slashing. Taking advantage of Ryaji's disadvantage, he gradually grasped the rhythm of the battle and suppressed the latter's aura. Aura is a very mysterious ability, that can only be possessed by the strong. Rhodes is obviously a strong man, and he also has his own aura. This aura is like his swords, going forward without hesitation, cutting everything. Kang kang kang. The sword blades collided continuously, and the power of thunder shook and roared wildly. Even though Ryaji tried his best to restore the situation, facing Rhodes at this time, he seemed powerless. Each has his style, and as a swordsman, Ryaji's style is actually an offensive one. Often, one blow of his sword is enough to make the opponent exhausted, so as to control the rhythm of the battle. But at this moment, his strongest aspect was suppressed by Rhodes, and the rhythm of the battle became chaotic. If he wanted to attack with all his strength, he would immediately be suppressed by Rhodes' Thunder Dragon. He wanted to use his speed to deter and look for weak points, but Rhodes' speed was not weak at all. Whether it was the speed of the body or the reaction speed of his nervous system, they were top-notch. In the end, a swordsman with an offensive style was forced to defend. If it weren't for the strong thunder currents that constantly affect his strength, he wouldn't actually mind defending until he finds an opportunity to attack. However, this way, the further the battle progresses, the greater Rhodes' advantage will be. Boom boom boom! Two brilliant sword chi collided together, bursting out into the sky. Boom! The deafening roar even made the people in the headquarters castle look over curiously, showing surprise. Why is the lightning striking the ground over there? By now, people like Crow and Nia couldn't even comprehend this kind of power. They felt a bit of insignificance. A random sword chi is enough to kill them, and occasionally a thunderbolt can seriously injure them. Under the leadership of the hack and the others, they withdrew far enough away, but they could still feel the sharpness of the constant collision as if the air was stabbing their skins. There was also the terrifying thunder that made their scalps tingle. Even after such a distance, their hair seemed to stand on end. And finally, it ended. Accompanied by a crisp sword groan, the famous dark green sword flew out of Ryaji's hand and plunged into the ground far away. Ryaji froze for a moment, then glanced blankly at his trembling right hand. He can still remember that day when he was defeated by that man and lost his arm. He practiced the one-hand sword style hard and vowed to never lose his beloved sword in battle. Because for a swordsman, dropping the blade in battle means defeat. Since leaving Wano country and entering the New World, this oath has never been broken, but he never expected that today it would be broken by this young swordsman. After a long time, he just came back to his senses, looked at the indifferent young man in front of him with a complex expression, shook his head with a wry smile, and then said, "I lost." There was a kind of relief in his tone as if had let go of something, and the whole person's momentum gradually had a strange change. This startled Rhodes slightly, showing surprise, but he quickly recovered his calm. Is it so easy for the great swordsman to just give up? It's not like Ryaji is weak, and it's not like he can't find a solution for his lost arm. If he keeps practicing, he has the potential to be a great swordsman. You are really good. It seems that the world will witness one more great swordsman in the future. Ryaji said in a calm tone. After his sharpness had subsided, he seemed to have changed a little. His face was still solemn, but he was no longer aggressive. He was like an old master. Thanks for your good words. I will work hard. Rhodes wasn't humble either. A swordsman who gave up on becoming a great swordsman is definitely not a good swordsman. Rhodes was even thinking about defeating Hawkeye and taking the position of the world's #1 swordsman. As for Zoro, well, let him challenge me then. Ryoji didn't continue talking, but just took a deep look at Rhodes. Even though he just gave up on his dream, Ryoji couldn't help but feel a bit surprised that this kid actually defeated him. He once heard Crow talk about Rhodes, and he knew that this young man wasn't even in his 20s, he was just 17. At this age, he has the power to defeat him. This kind of talent and potential is really incredible. Ryoji can also be said to be well informed. During his years in the Revolutionary Army, he traveled all over the world, experienced all kinds of storms and waves, and met many young and strong men, but he has never seen such a monster. This is no longer something that can be achieved by pure talent. Will, hard work, luck, opportunities, and other aspects are all indispensable.